sure you fill those out and get them to Valerie, and she will get them in order, and we'll get through that when we get there. All right? So I guess we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Randy, I'm going to ask you, thanks for somebody for turning on that microphone. I'm going to ask you about any additional agenda items, and then I've got one question before we go. So any additional agenda items?
There are not.
Okay, so the next question is just, remember guys, I see a lot of students here, and I learned in 3rd grade from Mr. Bear that if I can keep my kids outside, that's the best. So I'd like the kids' reports to go first, presentations to go first. Is that just the 8th grade, or is there more? Is that just the Hometown Hero, or is that, or any of the district PLC stuff, is that in there?
I think it's just the Hometown Hero.
Is it just the Hometown
I
Heroes?
believe just hometown.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, well, we've got a consent, before we get into that, is there any public comment on any of the agenda items? No? All right, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Board in front of you, you'll see the meeting minutes from last month, as well as some financials, and then there's the normal consent agenda, which is I don't think there's much in there this month besides the meetings and the minutes and the financials, so.
Ted, the only comment I'd have on that is, I think Sherry McGrath was present for the last board meeting, which would give us our quorum. The way it's noted, there was not a quorum actually, so, but Sherry, I believe, was here. That'd be 5 board members were here.
Okay, we'll make that change.
Good catch.
Good job. All right, anybody else? So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support.
All right. All in favor of passing the consent agenda? Say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, consent agenda passes. All right. So now we'll get on to it's awesome to see this many people. And I know there's a lot of cool presentations and things that are happening tonight, so this is exciting. So I'll hand it over to our middle school to discuss Hometown Heroes. I had to steal this one.
All right, thank you. We weren't expecting applause, but we'll take applause. My name is Nate Ingalls. I'm a dean of students at the middle school, and we're really excited to be here this evening to present to everyone a Hometown Hero unit that we do, and we've been doing in our school for a while. This year it took on a little bit of some added pieces, and so we're going to talk about those a little bit, and I'm not going to talk too long because we have some people here who I think can speak much more eloquently on this than I can. But I did want to kind of give a little bit of some history with this. So our students for a great number of years have been going out to Sherman Lake, to the YMCA camp in 6th grade. And there they have the 4 principles of honesty, caring, respect, and responsibility. And so we use the acronym HICKER. So we talk a lot about middle school being HICKER, may HICKER be with you. You know, that wasn't very HICKER, let's be HICKER, those sorts of things. And so, you know, that is a definite pillar of our school.
It's better than the hook. We got rid of the hook.
Check 1 2 2 2.
I'm Sienna Eddy. As Claire said, I'm also from Teammate 1.
Hi, I'm Talia McCullum. I'm on Teammate 2.
The teachers introduced us to what a hero meant, and by doing this, we are led to deciding on who our hero would have been.
Next was us interviewing our hero and witness. From our view, the teachers inspired us to write interview questions and showed us how we should film our video, via in-person, through Zoom, or on a phone call. The next step in this project was writing our storyboards. A storyboard helps kind of structure our video and voiceovers. It gives us an idea and lets us visualize what that'll look and sound like.
Last, we gather all the information and create a video. We use Canva, a graphic design company, to edit our videos. When our videos are finished, we will watch them in our hour and vote which ones deserve recognition. When it comes down to 5 videos, we take a huge vote and elect the winner of the MMS 2021 Hometown Hero Award.
I chose my grandpa Steve Shark because he helps his community by checking scales for LaGrange County and helping in food kitchens.
I chose my person, Mrs. Crumpets, because she helped me a lot with my English, though not so much anymore. However, up to the Hero project, I've never really gotten to know her story. It was good
chose him is because he's never really stopped giving back, from being in the military to working in juvenile centers and helping underprivileged and troubled teens turn their lives around. My hero is Fawn Lewis, my uncle who isn't my uncle. Out of all people, I chose him because he contributes to the community. From when he started in student council to now where he is on the board of Loaves and Fishes and a volunteer coordinator for
Let's go with 3.
George Eddy, a grandpa, a dad, a son, and a brother. He is all those things, but also so much more. He is a mentor, someone who helps others without asking anything in return, a volunteer firefighter, a veteran, and someone who worked to help teens in need. I think George Eddy is a hometown hero because he cares about others, is a veteran, and helped tens of thousands of teens. One reason George is a hometown hero is because he cares about others. My grandpa dedicated his life to helping other people, from setting up emergency hospitals in the middle of war zones to helping an old lady get out of her car after an accident.
My dad has really never stopped giving back to the community, and I think it's kind of interesting and cool to talk to him about it, because he's always surprised that what he does has any impact, from teaching Tai Chi at a cancer care and treatment center to what he did at the juvenile center, serving in the military, being a volunteer firefighter. He never stops helping as much as he can and giving back.
My hero positively impacts the community because he helped a person in need even if he knew he would get nothing from it, and even though it might be an inconvenience, he still did it. George Eddy is also a hero because he is a veteran. He was a surgical tech in the Air Force. While my grandpa was in the Air Force, he was a surgical tech, but also someone who trained others to be in his position. My grandpa ended up being stationed in Japan, a long way from home, being trained how to set up hospitals in the middle of battlefields and war zones.
They asked me to be in the 655th Tactical Hospital, where we'd fly into war zones and we'd have to set up surgery, so the planes would fly down in, drop us off, and within an hour that we landed, we'd have to be able to do surgery on the wounded soldiers.
My grandpa was all the way across the world, with new people, a new language, and no one he really knew. But even though he was in crazy circumstances, he still persevered and did his best to make it in the Air Force. Most importantly, he is a hero because he helped thousands of teens through difficult times in their lives. My grandpa dedicated his life to juvenile centers and helping teens in need. He would take out of his own paycheck to buy things for them and take them out on group trips to give them some sense of normalcy in their lives. He is also a mentor to them, teaching them things their relatives couldn't.
My dad really focused on making the experience as positive as possible for the kids. He was definitely a mentor for them. I remember he took time, he took money out of his own paycheck to pay for the recreational equipment. I remember he bought a PlayStation 2 when it first came out. He really tried to make an unfortunate situation for the kids as positive as possible.
My grandpa helped so many teens in his life, and by doing all these things for them, he provided some comfort and stability in the tough times they were all going through. George Eddy should be chosen for the MMS Hometown Hero Award because he truly cares about others, is a veteran, and because he helped so many teens when they needed it the very most. My grandpa has helped so many people in his life, and he has put his life in danger just for the sake of others with so little recognition. The least we could do as a community and as a school is this small gesture.
And just so you all know, all of the videos from these amazing students are all on this slideshow, and they're all just as beautiful and just as heartwarming. I highly recommend you take the time to watch them, and I'm just so proud of these kids. So, good job, you guys.
So yeah, in the end, there will be a final project chosen from Teammate 1, a final project chosen from Teammate 2. We will, as an 8th grade, go to the auditorium and get to. It's really nice when the hero is actually able to be there in attendance, and we will be able to watch those and honor those people. And so it's a very special project, and that's why we chose to present it. These students, pretty amazing. Thank you.
Our Hometown Hero ceremony is going to be occurring on May 27th. Is it 27th or 26th? We'll be sending out invitations to the school board if you guys would like to attend and watch the videos, and then also hear from the heroes that win.
Thank you.
Thank you all for presenting. Before you take off, AJT, before you take off, does the board have any questions for any of the students or teachers about the project? Nothing? Sorry.
It's really well done, very clear and wonderful project. So I don't have any, but thank you all.
So I appreciate it. Jordan, were cats just multiplying in that video or what? I mean, it's just like sitting there all of a sudden. I was waiting for the third or fourth one to show up. Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody. I was like, whoa, there's another cat. I was hoping they'd skip back to him. Maybe there'd be a third cat that'd show up. That'd be fun. Oh, I know they were sent to the board. I don't know how we can get those out. I don't know what.
I'll talk to the teachers about it. Yeah, that was an internal, I think, when they published that to the board. Yeah.
And I know they were just trying to be respectful of everybody's time, but I did watch a few of them, and I know that they were all powerful and they were all nice. It was great to see those kids show up, and now that he's gone, I'll apologize. JT was self-conscious because he had to wear his lacrosse stuff because he had to get to lacrosse practice after this. So everybody else is all dressed up, and he's like, "I'm wearing my cleats, Dad. I'm supposed to respect the board." And I was like, "It's fine, man. I give you permission." So I didn't want to do it in front of him, so I'll wait and do it on I'll do it on YouTube afterwards, right? So he'll get to hear about it from everywhere. Well, it'll be forever, so that's awesome. So I should have thought about that before I did it.
He did great.
Anyway, sorry, buddy. That's something I usually say every day to him. So we'll get into the district PLC update. And for those acronym challenge, that's professional learning community,
right,
correct?
Exactly. There were some tears back here from the Hometown Heroes. I don't think anybody's going to cry tonight, right, for PLCs? Okay. All right, let me go ahead and open this up a little bit.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and jump in here really quick and do an introduction. Jenny Ross Klingel, who is our district MTSS coordinator, really has taken the lead here in the district with kind of launching our professional learning community vision throughout all of our buildings. And we have quite a few of our PLC facilitators, and it looks like many of our third grade team members and later elementary staff. I see in attendance here today, a couple middle school staff as well. So, you know, a lot of great work, you know, taking place this year from a curricular standpoint that Jenny has really, you know, been, you know, kind of spearheading. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jenny and her team.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone coming, especially the first, like, really great night outside. So I really appreciate that. So last year, Jay and I did a presentation for the board on professional learning communities, and I will refer to them as PLCs, just so you know. But I'm here today to provide that district-wide update. Do I just wait until that goes away? I don't say okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to, the next slide, I think you have these slides with you, and I'm going to provide a definition because I always go back to this, and I know the facilitators, I say this over and over again, but it's so crucial because it has all the words we need. So. As a review, a PLC is an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and to achieve better results for students. The ultimate goal of any PLC is to ensure high levels of learning for all students. And we really say all. All means all. So I created this graphic to kind of represent our work, and it always starts with those 4 critical questions. This is the PLC Collaboration Cycle, and it always revolves around those 4 questions. What do we want all students to learn? And you can see the number 1. We see in there like essential standards, learning targets, scope, and sequence. How will we know they have learned it? How will we respond when some do not? And how will we respond when some already know it? 3 and 4 is that MTSS model. We're meeting the needs of all students. So when I created this graphic, it was important to me because this represents the ongoing process, and we focus on those results in our continuous school improvement. Our PLC collaboration cycle is what the collaborative teams focus on when they're meeting every single time. And we've delved deeper into our collective commitment to PLC work by building the capacity of educators through sharing foundational knowledge of PLCs, along with learning by doing, which is totally engaging in the work in a day-to-day. So time is always a huge challenge in education, and that's where priority has become key. This focuses on what is most important. Collaborative teams are laser focused on this cycle, and ultimately this results in having the greatest impact on student achievement. And knowing how important all this work is as challenging as it can be, it's really critical to have support of this work, and this district is supporting the work, and I'm going to talk about some ways that we've been doing that. So we have to be engaged in a productive manner and have the support so that we can ensure the successful implementation of this model. So the first one, PLC Facilitators. Mattawan has a group of 36 PLC facilitators. Some are here today, and they also have some actual people in their teaching family to support them as well today. This is our guiding coalition that has focused on learning, collaboration, and results. And they lead the work by participating on ongoing learning and meetings with me and facilitating those collaborative team meetings, supporting colleagues when they're needed, and helping sustain our whole district PLC culture. This group has been at the forefront of leading this change. Second are the collaborative teams. We actually have horizontal and vertical collaborative teams. Every teacher at Mattawan is part of a collaborative team or 2, and they work together all year defining Mattawan's curriculum for each content area, specifically identifying essential standards, learning targets, and scope and sequence, which were our district-wide goals. They've aligned their instruction to this defined curriculum that they've created as a team. And also a website, which I will show you in a few minutes, was created to house all those district curricular documents that they developed, which is a really nice place. I'll show you that. It takes place of all the binders floating around and everything. We have a nice place where teachers are going now to find their essential standards. So we did a lot of work this year in vertical teams for ELA and math as well. district-wide. I led the ELA in young 5 through 5th, and Kevin led the math work in the elementary. In young 5 through 5th, members from each grade level team came together and held discussions around instructional philosophies as well as assessments. This vertical collaboration resulted in the creation of a common instructional framework that's also listed on the website now for K-5 in math and ELA, and it's also ongoing at the secondary level. This vertical work that we've been doing this year is really instrumental in aligning our curriculum and resources throughout the district. Other content areas have also been meeting throughout the year during PD days vertically, such as, I'm thinking of some like middle school and high school, Spanish, 8-9 science, all the specials and electives from different buildings, so they meet with different people in the same content area in their buildings, have great conversations about instructional philosophies, and trying to bridge that gap between the buildings, streamlining our curriculum, which has really been beneficial. Here we go again. The next one actually says academic calendar. Frequent half and full staff PD days were worked into the calendar this year to support our PLC work. This has been an essential piece needed for true collaboration and is so appreciated. If there's one thing I hear from everyone across the board is the appreciation from having those days built into there. And keeping that time sacred is super important, focusing on working within their collaborative teams on this work. All right, so I have an example. I love when people tell me they're intervening, I always bug them and say, come and invite me. I love to go around, especially coming from the interventionist world. That's the MTSS model. That's my favorite part. So I try to go around and actually watch this in action as they've been working through, and everybody's in a different spot. But if they're to this point where they're regrouping based on their standards that they have created as a grade level, and then they're regrouping in families, I try to go and take a peek at this. This is actually a 3rd grade. I know we've talked about K2, the power half hour. You had that presentation in December. So now it's kind of moving out. This is 3rd grade. And what you see in the model is that PLC collaborative process that has happened. Really, they've gotten to the point where they have a defined curriculum. So they are teaching the skills to the students that they have determined are essential. They have used common assessments to assess students. As a team, they analyze that data, and based on that, they've created interventions or extensions to support those students, all about student learning for all students. And then they repeat that cycle over and over again. So what you don't see is behind the scenes work. So there's so many rich discussions that are taking place from those collaborative teams to get to this process. It's all around instructional practices that were maybe shown to be more effective, or how to improve assessments based on student misconceptions perhaps, or even monitoring achievement goals that may have been set as a team. And kids are working on very specific skills now based exactly on what those common assessments have shown the collaborative teams. And they're shuffling the kids around that. So it's what they have deemed as essential, and they need additional practice or extension based on that data. So one thing I just always want to say is to keep in mind that every collaborative team, so we started our Understanding Our Foundational Learning last year, and so now this year, every single team is in a different place. So even though we had district goals, the true celebration is no matter where they are, I tell them this is a true celebration. We are engaged in the work. Everyone at Mattawan is engaged in professional learning communities. So goals were to focus on team collaboration, defining the essential standards and learning targets, and that scope and sequence. When are we going to teach that? Everyone has committed to this process, and they follow that as a collaborative team. So now where I am in the work with collaborative teams, I'm focusing on differentiation, just like teachers would with students, and meeting them where they are on their next steps. So everyone is kind of in a different place, and that's fine. We'll get everywhere, keep moving right along. That's exactly where we're going to pick up in the fall. We're toward the end of the year. So when we start in the fall, we'll continue defining our curriculum. We'll continue looking at tweaking those learning targets, scope and sequence, looking at common formative assessments for people that haven't had time to create them. We will start implementing an intervention model and keep moving it forward. Different buildings are here to talk about that, where they are in the work as well. I did want to tell you, show you real quick this website. that houses, it's for teachers, and this is housing all our documents. This is evidence of all the work that we've been doing throughout the Weird. You have a home page, and if you actually, I don't think you can see it from where you are, but we have the home page. And if you look across the top, there's a tab that says Professional Learning Communities, and this is where all the work of the collaborative teams will go. They'll have agendas that they work on when they're meeting, and the agendas are all around those 4 critical questions. So it's all focused on that PLC collaboration cycle. This is where their documents are housed. And then across the top are different content areas. We even have electives right here because it goes all the way from Young 5 all the way through 12th. So you could hit something like, let's hit math, for example, and go right into that content area, and teachers can see all the essential standards. What are they teaching across the board? It doesn't show up like this when I'm disconnected for something moved, and the high school is supposed to be down with the other one, so something funny just happened because it looks totally fine on my screen when it's not connected to this. So we have essential standards listed all the way Young 5 through 12, there we go, all the way through high school. This is what they have said is essential to teach, and they have agreed upon this. You can't see it. They'd agreed on this defined curriculum at each grade level in each content area. So that's the work they have done for that. And they also have all put on their scope and sequence, when they're teaching, how long it's going to take. Some people have put on their common formative assessment data right into their charts. And then we'll get to the next step, which is proficiency scales, and some people have actually started doing that work as well. There's a resource page, and this is what I'm saying when I meet everyone where their needs are. If you remember last year, we talked about defining tiers. We want them to remember and refer to these documents when they're interviewing with students of what we consider Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, kind of a document to refer back to. And I've created a whole step-by-step process of people tend to ask me, hey, we're done with this, what do we do next? And I always say, hey, remember that document? I've laid out exactly what the next step is. Why don't you read that, and I'll come on over and lead you guys in that work. So it's been a great resource that Jay actually got this website running, and we've been just dumping in the documents as people are finishing the work. So before I introduce, I'll let some people give you updates and some celebrations to share. I did ask my facilitators, I sent them a survey, and I said, when you think about your PLC work this year, what's something positive that you can say has come out of it from your collaborative team? And you can see, of course, word clouds they throw out. The biggest word is always what it comes back to, collaboration. And that has been key in all our work this year. Alignment, progress, collaboration, over and over and over again. And that's all the work for PLCs revolves around collaboration, alignment, and progress. So that has been something that's been fabulous this year, and I can just see that we pick up where we left in May, pick it up in the fall, and keep moving forward. So what I have for you today is I have a group of educators, and I'm going to actually introduce each group. You're going to see some different things and hear some different things. So Megan, would you like to go first? We have Megan Gallo. She is from Young 5s, and I'll just leave this up because I don't think you have anything. Megan's going to provide
Can I ask one question first?
Sure.
Because I think what we're about to see is exciting, and what I want to get in front of maybe parents that are listening or parents that are in the audience is that I know sometimes those full and half day things can feel frustrating. Mm-hmm. And what I think we're about to see is the fruits of that, right? So right. I don't think we can beat that drum enough times, showing parents what the learning community is able to do because of those flexibility that the families are providing us.
I love that you have said that because that's been so important, and I actually have heard people say, my kids have another day off. So we're doing work here we cannot do with students in the building, and it's crucial because it's going to impact all students at Mattawan, and that's what we believe should happen. Thank you for saying that. So Megan?
A few notes on my phone. Hi, I'm Megan Gallo. I teach Young 5s at the ECEC. And tonight I'm just going to share just my experience with our PLC team this year and where we're at in the work. And I will start off too by saying we are so grateful for those half days, and we know that it's hard on families sometimes, and we appreciate the flexibility, but we truly could not do the work that we have done this year without those days, when you think about maybe a half hour, an hour together, like during our, well, we for one don't have common planning time just because of the way that our specials are structured and scheduled, and our lunches don't overlap. So we maybe have like 10, 15 minutes all together as a grade level every day. And so having that chunk of time to really dive in and work together has been, you know, so great and so thankful. Yeah, and we're so thankful, and it's precious. Yeah. Because when you think about it, you know, we really created our Young Fives curriculum this year, and we could not really have done that in like little 15-minute chunks, like here and there. Like we needed that, you know, extended time to do that. So thank you again. We're very, like Jenny said, we're very appreciative of that. And that gave us a chance to do all the collaboration we did this year. So we are kind of in a different spot than a lot of the other buildings. So where we're at is we're kind of the unicorn grade. Like we're not pre-K, we're not preschool, but we're not kindergarten. We're right in the middle. And we're constantly trying to make sure that what we're doing is developmentally appropriate and age appropriate for our students. So that is fun, and we get to be creative, but it can also be challenging because we don't always have those examples to look for or to look at. And so what we've done in the past is look at the preschool and the pre-K standards, the Michigan ones, and also the kindergarten ones, and tried to just meet in the middle and meld them together. Well, this year, being a new building and having a new staff, we focused first on creating that positive, you know, collaborative culture together, building those relationships. But also, we decided to just kind of start from scratch, and we created our own math standards this year. That was our first work that we did. So we did look at the preschool and the pre-K, and we looked at the kindergarten, and we looked at our current curriculum, and we wrote our very own standards. And that was great. It was heavy work, but it was great work to do because now we're all on the same page. We know we made it equitable across the grade level. Each student in each classroom is getting the same exact instruction. When a new teacher joins us, we have our curriculum that we created that we really truly understand and we're behind, we have that to hand to them. So after we created those math standards, next we went back and looked at our essential standards that we actually created the previous year, last spring, and made sure those were aligned with our new standards that we created. Then we went and looked at our common formative assessments, which is how, you know, we worked on what will students learn, and then our common formative assessments tell us if they've learned it. And we looked at those, made sure those were aligned to the standards that we created, and then we made common formative assessment kits for ourselves and, you know, got all set ready to use those. And then we were able to begin using some of those and having some of the deeper conversations about student data and, you know, what students were learning and how we were going to support them. And then we started going through the same process with English language arts. And so that's kind of where we are right now. We're finishing that up at the end of this year. Did the whole same thing we did with math, with English language arts. And I'll tell you, we really have valued all those conversations we've had because we were able to really just hash out what do we want our young fivers to learn and why is it important. And I think I'm really proud of the work we've done this year, and, you know, we've come a long way. And I think it's, you know, built our morale and our relationships along, you know, at the same time, all that collaboration we did together. So we really look forward to next year and just continuing, you know, using all of the things we created this year to have those more conversations about student data and how we can best support them and make sure that every student is successful in Young Fives. So come visit anytime. You will love it. Randy and Jay love to visit us, don't you? Get our students all riled up, right? and then they leave. They're like grandparents. Yeah.
That was all in about 15 seconds. We just went right.
I could
right
see
to
like
grandparent.
Randy with a pocket full of Werthers in his cardigan, just handing out candy.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Getting them all
How
spun
fun.
up, like, hey, I gotta go.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you. So Jen, yep, I think your slides are embedded in here. Okay. And you could. You can bring the team. You can introduce the team that's supporting you then, and I will. Your slides are right on there.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm Jen Omo, and I teach 3rd grade at the Later L, and I've brought along part of my team in 3rd grade. So this is Kathy Sills, Bren Bear, and Megan Wisner. Megan Wisner teaches in our resource room, so we use her as part of our PLC, part of our 3rd grade team. We are broken up into 2 teams in 3rd grade, so we're the blue team or the gold team. And we're the blue team. So she likes the green, but I said, you know, we have to be the blue team. So when we look at 3rd grade, we have to celebrate a lot of work. The half days are fabulous, but so are our planning times. We need our planning times and our lunches and those half days to make up what we do. I mean, if you look at our graph, it's going to tell you a bunch of amazing things. But 3rd grade, we've created all of our 8 essential standards. Within our 8 essential standards, we also created all of our common formative assessments. We needed more. So we took what we had, and then we've spiraled it. So every other week, we spiral those skills that we did back in September, and they keep coming around. Because kids that might have really had it in September might need a refresher come March. And that's okay, because then one of us is going to be taking one of those groups. So we brought you an example of what, we call them quick checks. We don't call them tests. We just want to know, quick check, where are you at? What are you doing? This is where we are. And so that's kind of what we've created along the way. Yeah, we got Vanna's here. Oh yeah, those 3 digits, we started back in September. And boy, oh boy, subtraction's really difficult for our 3rd graders. So, especially with those zeros in the middle. So we've spent a lot of time on subtraction. We've also finished our math scope and sequence for the year. However, moving to semesters for next year, we're gonna have to kind of reevaluate and change a few things and how that will roll out for next year. We're looking forward to ELA next year. We didn't tackle that this year. We figured we needed to really solidify math, so we had that underneath our belt. So when we came back in August and September, we could start off with math and then add ELA because we've already created these assessments. Apparently someone needs us.
I think one of my children is looking for my iPhone.
Well, that's fantastic. But we've really set the expectations high in 3rd grade. If you set high expectations, they're going to get there. And now, even though we don't call it a test, we call it a quick check every other week for the kids, they're like, oh, we get to go to regrouping. Oh, we get to do this. They're super excited to run to one of our classrooms down the hallway, and then I'll see them back in a half an hour. It only happens twice a week. So those 30 minutes that we meet them with twice a week, we really jump on those standards and really dial them in. It's kind of nice because I always say, oh, I'm so glad I had you this time, but I'm hoping I don't see you next time. But if we see them next time, then I now know what we really need to look at and really solidify. We have 5 in our group. Our 5th is on maternity leave in our team, but we have 6, but 5 with the resource room. We regroup and we remix us. So it's not that one of us is always teaching subtraction. So we keep it fresh for the kids. We keep moving us. We keep moving them. So it keeps it new every week, which is pretty awesome. I think Mr. Baer's going to talk to all the data. Thanks for having us here tonight.
Is there more on here?
Yep, you're going to hit this button.
Okay. So I won't go over this, but I think the most important thing to know looking at all this data is that this data represents all of the children in our family. This is children with 504s, IEPs, or any special or specific learning need. So we're very proud of what we have and we'll continue to get better. But if you look kind of here at the beginning, in the first round, these are all the children that had not yet mastered independently 3-digit addition with regrouping. And now we are down here at the end of the year to 6 children. We'll be happy when that's at 0. We've got 19 more days. But as you see that, you'll see the same thing here with subtraction. We had upwards of 50 or so children that after they learned it when given the chance to show us their level of mastery independently, and we're down again to 5 or 6 children per essential standard. So that tells us as a team that we're doing the right things for children. We can continue to get better, but it is definitely a good sign of the work that we've put in together, that the children are responding to these interventions, and these interventions are very intentional. So I won't run you through all of this. The one thing you'll kind of see here at the end is like our challenge group here. And the children that have mastered all of these skills that can show that at 100% mastery then get 2 days a week during that intervention time for some extended learning, because those students have a very specific need just as much as our students with 504s, IEPs, or just a simple essential standard struggle, be it subtraction or not. So that's something very important to note, is that once they've mastered them, there's still a lot of focus on what's next and what more we can do to keep them engaged and keep them growing. Sometimes I feel like those top students aren't as involved in our discussions and some of our meetings, and it really is when we meet on here. We meet on all kids. I kind of think that's about it as far as the data to be shared. And like here's an example, like tomorrow or this week we're taking them outside to Asylum Lake, and we do a lot of outdoor learning in our family. And this is a great way to take those essential standards and apply them outdoors, apply them through STEM activities. Here's an example. Some of the oldest trees in Kalamazoo are right here in Asylum Lake in all of West Michigan. And through this math lesson, they will be learning all of these are essential standards that we've identified in 3rd grade. Measurement, division, multiplication, subtraction with regrouping. The same skills we've been working on all year, every 2 weeks, they can start to apply outdoors in very meaningful ways. So I just thought that was fun to mention, because that's just a real extension of some of the hard work that the children are doing and how they can apply it outdoors. Is there anything else that we didn't mention? It is definitely a team effort. It's not just the 5 of us. Our resource room teacher, Mrs. Wisner, works with a group. Our math paraprofessional staff and Mr. Conklin's math staff, they are working with groups. So all hands are on deck when it comes to meeting all of the essential standards that we've created this year.
Hey, it was a culture we really had to create at the beginning. I will say it wasn't perfect. It wasn't spectacular, but now we're cooking, and we can see it from our data. So really excited about that.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done, but we're happy with where it's at now, and we'll get better next year for sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
I've got a quick question. Mrs. Omo, you mentioned how you mix kids up and mix staff up, teaching different things. Does that keep them from feeling stigmatized by, I'm going to Mrs. Omo, so I must not be good at this, right? I'm going to Mr. Bear today, so I must be really great at it. So at least that way they get to mix it up with other kids.
Well, and we all teach differently.
Yep.
And so different kids are going to learn differently from different people. They are all getting the same standards from us in our homerooms. So we've already taught that once. Maybe Mr. Bear says one word that just really kicked that kid into that, oh my gosh, I got it. And they come back super excited. So we have to keep it moving and keeping it fresh for all of us.
Awesome, thank you.
So Carrie Smith is going to represent the middle school.
Hello, so that's a hard act to follow. I don't have any graphs or data. I've been in meetings for the last 5 days, thanks to Randy. That's all right.
I'm not moving at a grandpa pace.
So I'm Carrie Smith. Most of you know me. I've spoke to you a lot. I'm also the PLC math leader in the middle school. And so I just want to tell you that the PLC this year has helped us a lot. We started off, and in the middle school, we have common planning with our grade level. So we have been able to have common assessment, make sure we're aligned and everything. But the biggest thing that we missed and we never really had was being able to talk to the other grade levels. And that has been amazing because, first of all, I don't know if you guys are aware of what I teach. I teach 6th graders that are taking advanced 7th grade math plus. I teach 7th graders that are taking 9th grade algebra. I teach 6th graders that go to regular math and then come to me for extra help, math essentials. I teach 7th graders that go to and then come to me for math essentials. And I teach 8th graders that come to me for math essentials. So I have 5 different curriculums, and that time to be able to sit with the grade levels all across the board so I can make sure I correlate with what they're teaching, follow, okay, here's where their holes are, let's work on that. Here's what I need to work on here. I've been working with Kevin, it gives me a lot of time also. So that has helped a lot. We have benefited in the middle school by being able to talk to the high school. That has been amazing. I don't think I remember it was like 12, 13 years ago we were able to talk to the high school. So that time to talk to the high school and make sure we're correlating with them has really helped a lot. So we're working. We are at, like I said, we're at different levels. Every grade in math is at different levels. You know, our 7th grade math was all brand new this year. Our 6th grade math has been working together for years. Our 8th grade math, kind of fairly new and working together. So we are at different levels of where we're at, but it does help a lot to have that time. So I want to say thank you, even though I picked on Randy and Jay. Thank you for giving us that time, and it is amazing, and we are looking forward to what is in the future, and we're looking at a new program, which you guys will talk about later, so I'll let Kevin take that over when it's time.
So we have 3 5th grade PLC facilitators, and Kimberly was able to be one of them. So thank you so much. Can you give us a 5th grade update?
So it's, I think that
Because of the YouTube thing.
they're gonna. This is dangerous. So I think the thing that just moved my heart so much through this process is it's okay to say, I don't get this. Why are we doing this? How come this is? Why do we got to do this? And I think that the space that we've been allowed to say those kind of sometimes cranky questions is so important, because we need to buy in and understand collectively we are so much more powerful than one person trying to like desperately paddle to keep their chin above water. And I think we all want the same thing for kiddos. And that's the thing that's been so special for me to watch. There's been uncomfortable conversations, you bet, but that's the only way you grow, and that's the cool part. And so while we're all and the beautiful thing is being allowed to be at different places, that's gorgeous. Like to be allowed to say, well, my group is here and your group is there. And I can look at the 3rd graders and I can say to my, lots of those guys I've taught with for years, they say this is how this works for us, and it may not work for us as a 5th grade, but we can take pieces and parts and we can learn from each other. And I think that's what has made this so beautiful. And again, in the 18 years I've been here in Mattawan, to have half days, like I cannot even tell you the power that has given, and I can't thank you enough for that. Like that's the thing that I always say in my review is like, the time to say, what are you guys thinking? Okay, well, what are you thinking? Okay, where are we going to go and how are we going to get there next? We've not had that time before. We just haven't. And this is what makes it just lovely and beautiful for our children, which is ultimately what we want to do, is good things for kids. So, thank you.
All right, so I think I have one team left, our 4th grade facilitators, Amanda and Bridget, and I actually have to, did you want me to pull up the?
Yeah, it's 4 slides, guys, don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry, we're busy teaching today. You have to stand on this side though, because that's how I refer to you. I'm like, this is Petticocker.
I'm on that side.
She's on that side, so I'm the 1st classroom and she's the 2nd classroom, and so when I talk, it's Mrs.
She points that way.
I point that way, and so it's easier if she's right on that side. So for those of you who don't know us,
This is Amanda Petticoffer. She
Teach
teaches
fourth grade.
fourth, and I'm Bridget Smith, and I'm the other fourth grade PLC leader with Amanda. And so the funny part was when we first started talking about PLCs is we were both from different districts, different states. Both were in PLCs, and we're like, oh, what did you do? What did you do? And, you know, just as teachers, we get really excited about, you know, stealing ideas from other districts and how are we going to help this district. I didn't say steal. No, not at all. Borrow from other districts. And, of course, we saw so much of the same. Yeah, there's a little bit different here and there, but for the most part, it was the same. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I know when we really first started this process, like this was our big thing, because since we'd come from districts that already had PLCs established and MTSS already established, we knew that this is where we wanted to focus our year on, was the collaboration, and not just within the family, but within the whole grade level. We absolutely wanted to have everybody on board and make sure everybody in fourth grade had a voice and had input, so then that way we knew moving forward everybody was going to be invested in the process.
Yeah, so we took our goal, and it was two things that we really wanted to work on. One, what's a PLC? What's the purpose? Why are we doing this? And then we also wanted to build the foundation, and we wanted to build the foundation for achievement. What's the PLC? Where are we going with this? Sorry, I move a lot. If you can't tell, this is very constricting here. I know, did you see my foot? I was like, good gravy, I can't sit still this long. No, I usually don't. I'm usually moving around. Welcome to my classroom. This is how we go.
She may make you get up and do squats soon.
I will make you do squats in just a couple minutes. Okay, so so how do we do this, Amanda? How do we move on to this?
I know Kimberly and everybody else has already said that. Like, we have just been so thankful to be given the grace to just take our group through the process for what we needed, and to pull back when we needed to pull back and focus on certain areas when we needed to. So that has been wonderful. And then to have the time, those half days have been so crucial for us to continue to build that collaboration. And with COVID and not having the same lunchtime anymore and not having the common planning time, like that was so incredibly needed this year. And it has felt good to know that we can all be in different places, and that is
okay.
just fine.
It's okay. So we were making this essential work to collaborate as a grade level to make sure that we achieve that student growth. And this isn't just my kids, it's not just her kids, it's our kids, it's all of fourth grade.
Yeah.
Every single one of us all together. Yeah. So after we came through these two, the purpose of the PLC and then to the Foundation for Achievement,
we wanted to
what
focus,
do we do?
Yeah, we wanted to focus on the two first critical questions. So those are, what do we want all students to learn? And then how are we going to know if they have learned it? That was really the goal we set for our fourth grade team this year, and we got there.
We definitely did. So we worked on the essential standards from last year. We also worked on learning targets, and then we also put together the pacing guide. And if Mr. Fleener would stop calling snow days, I would appreciate it. I kid because he knows I hate to take a day. So, really messed up our schedule here, buddy. Just kidding.
We definitely had to work. Our biggest goal, we focused on math this year in fourth grade. So we spent most of those half days building those common formative assessments as really a grade level. So we would sit together as a full fourth grade, and everybody would have input into the questions, and it was so exciting to see because like somebody would pose a question, and then one of us would say, no, we've got to raise the rigor on that one. And somebody's like, well, we need to see if they can also subtract with zeros. So just having everybody's input and being able to see everybody kind of come together. And we had a lot of fun because we also put our names into them, which was always funny when the kids finally figured out that most of the questions
They're like, wait, it says Bill. Is that Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Sweeney's in this? Yep, Mr. Sweeney's in this.
But that was really important to make sure that everybody had that input onto those questions, and then also with the directions, making sure that everybody was implementing it the same way. So we couldn't have my class take it and I say, no, you can't use a multiplication chart, but then another class use a multiplication chart because then our data is not the same. So we also spent a lot of time talking about what were the teacher directions, how were we going to implement it to make sure it was the same across the board, so that way we could look at the student data all across the same. And then we started working on proficiency scales. That's something we definitely still have to work a little bit more on.
We're going towards that. So not only were we working with the consistency across the board, but we were also working with the rigor. How are we going to push them? What are some questions? And sometimes we thought, yeah, that question was amazing. And then we got to it and we're like, just kidding. We're going to try that again. And then sometimes the rigor was really fantastic. And we really lifted it in there. Okay, so while that was going on, what else were we doing during that time?
We're also doing the spreadsheets. So we started out with one, just kind of like a Google Doc of how we were keeping track of our students, and that was not working for us in 4th grade. So Jenny said we could kind of make our own thing. Yes. So we ended up moving more to a spreadsheet where we were keeping all of our data. And we really just kind of started out just kind of simple. Every teacher had a tab, and we would have each of our scores listed for both. We have 3 common formative assessments per essential standard, so that way if the kids don't get it the first time, we have something else to give, and we can see how they're progressing. The cool thing though was, since 4th grade was definitely all working together, was once we started getting to the next part, which Bridget will talk about, one of our team members was like, well, wait a minute, if like we really want to dig into the data, and she created a whole other spreadsheet for us that we will definitely be using next year.
We're very excited about this.
In order to really kind of dig down on the kind of the questions and the errors that the kids were making.
So after you give the CFA, what do you do with it? Well, you take in the data and you need to look at the errors. So for example, for our division, in case you don't know what 4th grade standard might be for division, it's partial quotients. So exciting. So
none of you know how to do it.
None of you know how to do it. Some of you should have gotten videos a couple years ago.
Yes.
Recently. Anyway, so when you start to look at the data that starts to come through, you're going to see the same. So some students are like, I still need help learning how to divide. And then others, you're going, okay, you have a partial quotient to start. What's the next step? And then you have the other group, I'm going to run into you, sorry. You have the other group that totally knows how to do the partial quotients, and they know how to do standard algorithm. So what do you do next with them, and how are you challenging them in the next? So you've got dividends of 4 and 5 and divisors of 1 and 2. And so you get to then work that way through.
Yeah.
So what do we do next?
So after we did that with all of the error analysis, our next step was then really to start working on our goals for next year. So we, as a whole grade level, will start to look at how we're going to respond when the students have not learned it and the students that have learned it. So really starting to create those lessons as a whole grade level, so then that way, whatever group I have in my family, they're getting the same lesson as that group in the other family.
Yep. So we invite you all to PLCs. We are a fun group. And if you want to come for win time, we call it win time. The early L calls it power half hour. Come, please. We are a hoot. We are so much fun, and we love it, and the kids love to show off what they have been practicing. So come visit us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question, and it's because you have to forgive me. I don't have anybody at home that I can ask math questions of. She'll kill me. But why is it? No, I don't. No. That's a different language to me. I don't know what that is. But what I heard a couple different grade levels talk about subtracting by zeros being a big deal. Can you explain that to me? Like, why is it? Is it the borrowing thing? Okay. Okay. All right. I was just trying to figure out because I saw a couple of teachers every time. Because the neat thing about that was, as you were talking about, the 5th grade teacher was nodding their head, and so was a 3rd grade teacher. So it was cool to see the connection between the 3 of you. So.
That's the great thing though with the error analysis. Like we were talking with our math interventionist, with subtraction, there's like 10 different skills within that. And then it's a lot more complex. Because some just have 1 0, and some of them can borrow within 1 0, but if it's like 5,000 and they have to go all the way to the 5 and carry it to the ones place, that's hard. So you have all of these different levels of students, so you could have 5 different groups just from subtraction.
But that's how deep the work gets, because you
idea or the concept is, and if they're missing this thing down here that's essential, maybe back in third grade, it's just tough and they don't remember, so you gotta kind of go back and you have to do the right thing by kids and meet them where they are. So, you know, this is the way that it helps us be able to do that.
The data you're finding doesn't surprise me at all that it's been successful, because your enthusiasm and, like you said, and a couple of you in different ways, your buy-in, you know, you're sold on it, and with that excitement and you bring creativity with it, how can the students not want to learn? You know, the movement, I mean, talk about teaching the whole child. This is it. And so that part's awesome, and the other part I think that's awesome is that the specials are included in this, and comfortably so. It's not, they wait once everything is explained at the, you know, at the onset, and then they're told what they're going to do, which may have nothing to do with the rest of the staff is doing. That doesn't validate them. Whereas this, they can do vertical training, horizontal training, you know, and work, you know, with their own team. But it's really exciting. I can see why you're so motivated, and we sure appreciate it.
Our students love it, and they can't wait to see where they're going to go with what other kids. They don't even really care what the standard is that they're going to work on. They just want to see who they get to go with and like go in that room. And obviously then we make them do the work. But they're super excited just to like to go to that room and be able to get the spot.
Cool.
So.
The most exciting thing for me, Sherry mentioned, was your enthusiasm back. 'Cause I can't tell you how many times, you know, even in my work life, where it's like, oh, I got to go to another committee. Sweet, that's 4 hours. I'm not going to be able to get back. But what I see, you guys, the value is there, right? And that's awesome that you guys that you feel that, and that you're getting that value, and it's not just something that's being, you know, just another thing you've got to do to check a box. So I appreciate that. I appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'm sure it's hard. I'm sure it's really hard. So thank you.
Just want to make a comment while the team is still here, because I know as we move on in the agenda, some of you may be stepping out. I want to make sure you hear this. You know, I think maybe a mere 12 months ago, PLCs have been here, but the teams, you know, the buildings, the administration, the board supported, we made a collective decision to really jump into this, like all in. What it's not PLC light, it's the
PLC tight.
Right. Okay, it rhymes. But I want to just thank the board while everybody's here for supporting this initiative, and I will take all the digs and all the teasing. Absolutely, I like that, but I would just want to echo while you're all here the critical work this is. Just in a mere 12 months. If you're just listening to yourselves here, I mean, I'm writing things down, and I kind of, we're in the thick of it. We know a little bit more to the board, right? That's why they're here to present out, and the community needs to know this, but, you know, I'm learning things tonight that I didn't quite know, and just amazing amount of work getting done in what I would say a very short amount of time. So, you know, keep up the great work. Thank you, board, for that, and I love all the talk about the future, too, the goal planning, all ready for next year.
Since you hit the microphone, I just wanted to jump in as well. I just want to say how inspiring all of that was to sit and listen to. You know, again, 12 months ago, you know, we all collectively came together and began rolling out a vision, and you can see every single grade level team all embracing it. And Jenny, you said it at the right point. It started off, there were some difficult conversations, all right? We had to get to that level, and I think that's what's so great. And Kim, you shared about the time and that it is challenging, but it's healthy, you know, and that's when progress and growth begins to happen. And so I'm so excited and, you know, reinvigorated, I guess. Not that I wasn't before, but yeah, so just as a, you know, just to share out, you know, the district really has invested a lot of resources and time into, you know, the professional learning community process. And every time I think about PLCs, I look up at our vision and it talks about a collaborative learning community, that's something that we're committed to. This summer, we are going to be sending several administrators as well as PLC facilitators to the PLC at Work conference held by Solution Tree, which is really the foremost organization that facilitates professional learning community working, PLC work. So very excited that we're going to be able to take an entire team to that, to continue to build capacity of understanding of really the process of professional learning community conversations.
Okay, I have to say one more thing. One thing we've actually really, really learned, and our family was already pretty close, like I'm new in the family, but I already knew the other people for 4 years. You have to really like trust your family, and it's making us so close because you have to be brave and scared and say, man, my kids did not do well on this one, and what did you teach them? Because, right, because your data is so much better than mine. That's a scary thing to share with your group and admit it, and then ask for help or figure out how we can do it. And I would like to say that the person that helps us with that is Jenny, because she's so good at making it super safe of like, whatever you do, no matter how you mess up, you're not really messing up, but even if you feel like you're messing up, and so our family has gotten even closer because we share everything, and we don't really judge each other about like, whatever. And that's why we switched around too, because maybe I didn't teach that as well, and I do a regrouping, I'm like, they still don't get it, and I'm like, okay, then I think maybe you need to take over on the next round, and maybe you're gonna say something better. But also the fact that all 125 kids, they have 6 teachers that they can go to, and they feel comfortable with all of us. And from the very beginning that we have outdoor learning, we meet all of them because we go in like different groups. But then they can come to us, so if they see us in the hallway, they feel safe if they have like, I don't have a mask or whatever it was at the beginning of the year. And we're like, oh, we knew them. Where they wouldn't have just came up to us at the beginning. So that's really awesome that we know all those kids so well and they feel comfortable with all of us. So that's just like an extra bonus for the whole thing.
So 2 things came to me as you were talking about that. The first being the community or the consolidated school model that we have, right? So the idea that all 6 third grade teachers can get together, and that what you mentioned before, kids can get comfortable with all 6 of those teachers, doesn't happen in districts that have neighborhood school models, right? You've got one building teaching it one way, one building teaching another way, and they may try with the PLC, they may with the half days, but they're not getting those daily interactions with their students, right? And I've said before, I've seen the difference in my kids moving from living in Mattawan, and just the lack of angst, I guess, going to 6th grade because they know all the students. It's just the angst is about learning the new building. It's not because I'm meeting another 2/3 of my class that I'm going to graduate with. Or another whatever, right? So there's no one reinventing themselves over the summer to try to fit in. And I think that's a unique thing about Mattawan that I don't know is always as blatantly over the head for me as what I heard from you guys today about being teachers that you can learn from each other at the same time. And then the second thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention again that at any time when we can explain to parents how the PLC is affecting their student and that half day or full day off, any way we can do that, I think is important. So I'm not sure what that way is, but I know that because I have an educator in my house and because I am on the board, there are things I pick up on that maybe other parents that don't deal with the district every day. Like I know when Samantha comes home and starts talking about Power Half Hour, I know where that came from, right? And I know and I can see that she's genuinely excited. So there's probably another 1st grade parent out there that doesn't understand what their kid is talking about when they're talking about Power Half Hour and how they got to Power Half Hour, how the teachers got to that idea. And I think that's important for them to understand for the sacrifice that they may make, because that groan may not be coming from you guys about, I got another half day where I've got a half day where I go meet with all my teachers. But there is sometimes that on the community side where they're like, oh man, what am I going to do with my kid for this half a day, right? And anytime we can explain to them that, make that connection for them somehow, I'm not sure what that is, but I think that's important for us to try to figure out. I agree. I don't think you could make the strides that you're making without those half days. We just got to figure out a way to explain that to the community, what those half and full days are doing for their kids, right? Thank you again. Enjoy what sunshine's left. turn this microphone back on. So school board report, does anybody in this, I don't have really anything for a school board report. I know that we'll probably get into some, because there's 3 of us that were involved in the strategic planning discussion. That's probably going to take up a majority of it, but that's later on in the agenda. But does anybody else have anything, Sherry?
Just super brief, just for the high school softball teams, JV and varsity, they were unbelievable on cleanup day when we did the on and off ramps to Mattawan. I mean, it was cold, and they had so much fun. It just was, it was really neat to see, especially when they find certain items that they did not want to touch. But it was just neat. They were there for a long, long time and worked really hard, but laughed, and just fun watching it. So thank you to those girls and coaches.
Anybody else have anything from school board report? All right, we'll move on to the strategic plan update, and I'm sure there'll be more here.
Good evening, board. What a meeting so far. Super exciting. Well, I've got more exciting news for the board this evening. I'm happy to report we are absolutely on track, hitting all of our targets for strategic planning thus far. Dare I say, we might be a day or two ahead. I'll recap briefly, and the 3 board members that were part of the task force, Marika, Sherry, and Vicky, joined a task force meeting of about 49 individuals. So at any time you all want to jump in, I'll just give a terse overview here. So we did have a task force meeting on the 4th and 5th of May, 49 individuals, teachers, administrators, board representatives, community representative, parent representative, support staff, every department, large group, comfortably fit in this room. Good call on this room size, whoever planned that. It was a great 2 days. Gary Ryder led that. I felt it was very productive. He did a fantastic job. Lots of chart paper, lots of breakout sessions, lots of Post-it notes, lots of caffeine. Maybe not as much as Brittany. Or Bridget. Sorry, Brittany. Bridget. Wow. Lot of energy there. But
that's fine. I'm sure you weren't at the end of it.
Oh no, I will. Another reason to tease me. Anyways, that task force had one major goal, and that was to generate and quantify feedback for the vision, the mission, our value statements, core beliefs, our district promise, and then also identify what would be major buckets or targets for the work ahead of us, the actual objectives. And I'm happy to report they did just that. They did an outstanding job giving the core team data to work with. So the core team actually met today. So the task force handed all of that data off over 2 days. The core team met today. Our core team, we have some members here. Brian Cornish is on the core team. Jay Larn is on the core team. I sat on the core team. Sherry was our board representative from the core team. Carolyn Stiles was our community representative from the core team. We had a high school representative, Mr. Eastman, principal, and an elementary representative, Mr. Owen, principal, and actually had Miss Eaton, Stephanie Eaton, EC principal, as a representative as well, and they're kind of tag teaming the next couple meetings. So that group today, mission accomplished. We did create a draft. It is yet to be in your inbox. We're just kind of touching that up. But we have a draft value set of statements. We have a draft vision, a draft mission, a draft promise. We have our draft targets, and we actually have 2 to 3 draft goals under each target. So we're very excited to deliver that to the board. And so looking ahead, then I'll stop talking, and board members, you can kind of give your 2 cents. We are pushing out that draft to the board, to the task force, and then we will be pushing that out to all district personnel and the entire community through another survey, because the goal here, while that draft, Mr. Ryder pushed us to have that almost perfect in draft phase 1, we're going to push that out, get feedback. The core team will then come back. So that will get pushed out on the 11th of May, We'll be out for a week. The core team is planning tentatively right now to meet on the 19th. We're going to look at all of that data. And at that point, there should be some minor tweaks to that, all of those areas. So we'll look at that. The core team's going to talk about the format and just some other housekeeping things. And then that comes out again. We push that back out internally to the staff. We push that back out to the community, and at that point, typically in this process, there is very little kind of feedback coming back. It's almost, hey, here's what we have, draft 2, it's going to the board for a first review in June. So, very exciting. So, we're on schedule, and it just kind of folds into the other excitement you're hearing tonight, just seeing these pieces come together as we kind of look to the future. I'll pause here, board members that were at task force. Not to put you on the spot, but I will if you have any comments.
I just add, I think it was great. I think we had great participation for the 2 days. There was staff, there was community, as Randy mentioned, board members. But I think everybody put in a lot of work and made great strides in those 2 days. So very appreciative.
I'd say the same thing. It was very well organized. I've been a part of those strategic planning sessions before, and it doesn't seem to go as smooth as this went. You know, very timely. We hit all the markers, and people were very respectful for each other, our thoughts, you know, sharing. So I was really impressed with the process.
I'd had the opportunity to work with Gary a few different times with superintendent searches, and I know I asked you, or I asked you, Jay. See, you beat me up now. I asked you, Randy, about how that went over, and I guess I'll ask probably Vicky and Marika first, because I think Sherry, I know you've worked with them in the past. Like, did Gary add value? Did he bring a lot of value to that? Because I'm always excited to work with him. I just want to know what your guys' opinion was of Gary and how he led that group.
I think that's what helped. I mean, besides the team that organized it, he was very well organized, and how he was expecting us to go through some things. So, no, I thought he did very well.
Yeah, I would concur. I mean, I think he facilitated it well, and I have done this experience more in a business aspect, and it reminded me of a facilitator for those type of actions. So I think, yeah, he did very well.
So just one last reminder to those listening, community, staff, check your inbox here probably on the 11th toward the end of the business day, and then we'll kick off another 7 days of a feedback session on our draft, and we'll look forward to that next step. I would like to thank David Rose Food Service providing lunch, and actually Valerie Goss quietly sitting at the end of this board table. A lot of behind the scenes work on technology also, and just a lot of hands doing a lot of heavy lifting to make that day. I agree. Those 2 days go very smoothly. So, other questions from the board on the process, what's coming, etc.
All right. Hearing none, we'll get into new business. First thing on new business is committee assignments. I'll be honest, I forgot. Right? So, and thanks to Valerie. I think Randy prodded me a few times, and then I still forgot. So it took Valerie to give me the sheet, like, fill this out. I was like, oh, that's what I need to do. So I thought it was going to be just as easy as swapping Scott's name out for me and others. It wasn't that easy, because the little bit I know about a lot of you, I tried to put you where your strengths were. So as you can see in that document, what my guess or what my hope was for these committees, the executive committee kind of stands for itself. That's the president, vice president, and secretary. So that was pretty easy to fill out. And then finance committee, Mark, I have you down there to chair that with Bruce and Vicky for that finance piece. And I'll be, as a board, just for everybody, there's not a bunch of committee work that happens, but when it needs to, when we need to, we've got this, with the exception of the policy committee, which I think has been running pretty well, so I left that kind of alone. So that's, Bruce still chairs that with Maureen and Sherry. And then I just took myself off of chairing any of them since I have to chair these. So the Sherry, if you could help with that personnel committee, I've got you, myself, and Marika on the personnel one, and then the facilities, Bruce, Mark, and Marika, and then student programs, Maureen, myself, and Vicky. So if everybody's okay with that, if there's something you're on that you don't want to be on, or you think you fit someplace better, just let me know and we'll work through that. But we don't typically get into that too much. I don't think we have to vote on this. I think it's just a here they are. So there we go. There's our 2022 committees. So I got to figure out where my agenda went. So from there, we'll get into Jay. If you want to lead us through the capturing kids' hearts, the resolution that we've got. I know we talked about it last month, but
yeah. So board, what we have in front of you is a contract for professional development to bring capturing kids' hearts to our kickoff professional development days for all of our teaching staff. We are working on incorporating our paraprofessional staff into that as well, and part of a full professional development plan. How are we bringing CKH to the entire district? So this particular quote is basically to cover 4 what they call flagship sessions, along with what is also known as process champions, which is basically a one-day follow-up to ensure implementation of some of the strategies and practices that are taking place. So really the resolution, I know we have Kathy Brewster here, who did the presentation at the last board meeting. Talked a little bit about the impact that this can have on our students and staff. And again, just kind of through our conversations with our district school improvement team, talking about the importance of relationships, connecting with students, meeting their social emotional needs, promoting a positive school culture. Capturing kids' hearts really is a process that will facilitate and really foster kind of that positive environment and really enhance the environment that's already been created.
Just a reminder on the funds for that. Could you speak to that, Jay?
Yeah. So currently we have carved off some ESSER 2 or ESSER 3 details, right? Details. Did I put you on the spot? Yeah. So we are looking at utilizing some grant funding, and we're also in conversation with MPEF about looking at some possible funding from them as well.
Again, just to clarify, we're not anticipating any general fund dollars, correct?
That's correct.
Question. So it's for all teachers, right? Because it's 4 2 consecutive day training sessions, so that's with 50 people in each. So
yeah. So structurally, we would have 4 different sessions going on over 2 of our professional development days at the start of the year. So most likely, we would have a session going on at every building, with the exception of the Early Childhood Center partnering with the early elementary. So we can have 50 staff in the original quote, but then if any additional up to 60 is I believe an additional $400 per person.
Okay.
But to follow on that, just to make sure I got the math right, it's 4 2-day consecutive sessions for up to 50 people. So it's 50 different people on. Is it 50? Is it a total of 50, or is it?
Yeah.
Is it the same?
So it will be 200 total. So
Okay.
our first 2 days, if I remember correctly, I want to say it's the 24th and 25th of August, are 2 of our professional development days. We will have 4 sessions going on those 2 days. So we'll have 50 staff at the early elementary, we'll have 50 at the later, we'll have 50 at the middle school, we'll have 50 at the high school, all happening over those 2 days with 4 different facilitators.
So it has the potential to touch every teacher and staff member.
It absolutely will include every single teacher in the district. You know, the piece that we're working through right now is how do we incorporate and include, you know, paraprofessionals that are in the buildings. You know, we've talked a lot at our DSIT team about, you know, how our bus drivers are, you know, first and last contact for many of our students every single day. So how are they receiving that type of training as well? Our food service staff, you know, connecting with kids during lunchtime. So, you know, right now this particular quote is specific to, excuse me, to providing the training for our teaching staff. And, you know, part of what we're trying to do is, and, you know, has come out actually through some of the strategic planning conversation, is what is the long-term professional development plan for all staff members in the district? So that has already kind of launched me into, you know, how are we preparing for that and what will that look like?
Jay, if I interpret this correctly on the CKH premium package, which we're proposing here, that's an extra $25,000, but that gives us another year of counseling, troubleshooting, adjusting. Is that correct?
So what that is that's a sustainability resource. And so that is access to a network of other schools and administrators, different resources that Capturing Kids' Hearts has available for buildings to be able to utilize, as well as other professional development types of activities, online resources, so that, you know, we can continue to incorporate strategies, you know, for years to come. Because again, the flagship is the initial training, and then Process Champions is really looking at what is your plan for implementation and sustainability, and then you know, sorry, I got the language right. The premium is having access to resources to be able to continue sustainability.
Is that something that we would anticipate, like that part needing to be renewed, or is the idea that you get through the process and then it's more internal after that?
So part of my conversation with the organization is that yes, that would be an annual expense. Part of the feedback they gave me was, you know, after a year or 2, 3, you might determine based on resources and what you've done for implementation that maybe you don't need it for a year, 2 years, and then maybe it's something that you bring back later, just as, you know, as a refreshing resource. So, but the feedback from the organization was for really the first 3 years, that's something that you want to plan on. So for this year, it's included. It would be a $25,000 renewal fee every year.
Actually, I think the contract's it's cheaper than that. It was $4,000 per campus, so it might be $20,000 for each year.
It might
My
be
teacher
after.
friends are gone. I did that.
Right.
I did that multiplication right. Make sure they know. Without the multiplication table.
Right. Right.
So there'll be more time for discussion later, but is there a motion for this?
Yeah, I'd like to accept, did you want to talk about something first?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and accept the bid for this Capturing Kids' Hearts, right?
Mm-hmm. Support.
All right, now I've got a motion and support. Any further discussion?
One other question, for the facilities and it looks like facilities and travel, well, it doesn't really say, so facilities, it says to do it not on district property. So I imagine there'd be a additional expense for us finding a facility off district property. Could that all, would that be all, and then travel not included in the estimate, would that all be coming out of ESSER funds as well?
Yes, we can include it in that.
Okay.
One other item I just throw in, that Jay, you did take this before the district school improvement team. Just briefly about that.
Yeah, so Kathy's been on a presentation tour recently, and you know, obviously we held a presentation before our entire administrative team. We had the one before the board last month, and then actually followed one up with our district school improvement team, and lots of great conversation and support for bringing Capturing Kids' Hearts to the district.
All right, any further discussion?
On the grounds. Is that what I hear them saying?
I just read that in the facilities section. I'm not
I think it
sure
said if
why.
it wasn't,
Maybe.
does it say if it wasn't a quiet spot? Is that what it says?
We recommend the Capturing Kids' Hearts 1 training not be conducted on district or school properties. Room must be at least 2,800 square feet.
And that's on page.
That's under facilities.
Yeah, page 6. I see it.
Page 6. Maybe they would give us an exception.
That's generally what they're referencing would be during when school is in session.
Okay.
Right, so it's more when school is in session to avoid interruptions. Having, the case where an administrator's getting pulled out, they're missing those opportunities. They want to make sure that you have full engagement the entire time. So the fact that it's before, students are returning to the building, we would be fine.
Okay, good, because it's such a comfortable area where they don't feel at risk, and, this is their home away from home, really, and to pull them to a new location, I was...
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of extending the bid to, or agreement with Capturing Kids' Hearts, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Ms. Sturmer, if you would like to talk about our next thing, which is the engineering resolution for our mechanical equipment replacements.
We did send that project and request out for bid. So that was the competitively bid as it should have been, posted for 2 weeks. And so we did receive that back. That's the one from Tower, right? Tower Pinkster. So actually, we did not bid that one. We didn't have to. We just asked Tower to take a look at it for us. And so Brian Cornish and Michael Holohan are here. They've gone through it. We've all gone through it, but they have a little bit more of the detail with what we'd be looking at and some of the details on what that looks like for them to do that project. So I don't know if one of them wants to speak more to that.
And I may ask you to head to the mic too, just so we can get the audio. But just to recap, as Brian's heading to the mic, first want to thank Brian and Michael and Pam for working on this, and great feedback from the board last meeting. Just for those tuning in that may have not been here, great discussion about some HVAC opportunities in the future with the middle school and high school. And we went back, and these two guys, Pam went back and worked with Tower and to spec this out, engineer this out. So we're now bringing that back to the board with a resolution this evening, as we prep and think about roughly a year from now.
Yeah.
So, Brian, just an overview on the engineering piece here in the document, and then we can go from there. Thank you.
So, obviously, there was a lot of discussion before when we bid out the proposal for the chiller install, and obviously we only received one bid, so that's what sparked this with Tower Pinkster. Coming in, writing engineering specs, looking at our facility, what we have, how we can eliminate a lot of the old equipment and consolidate, which is kind of what we're looking at, and that's kind of what this proposal covers. So with this proposal, we're going to be covering like 4 pieces of equipment that will be removed. We have 3 pieces of equipment on the roof. So we have a chiller that feeds the cafeteria, one that feeds the auditorium, one that feeds the office area at the high school, and then the main chiller itself, which feeds the whole building. Also in that scope of work was adding air conditioning to the gym, which was a pretty big project in itself. Excuse me. and how we could accomplish that the easiest way. Brought tower in, brought in our mechanical engineers. We've walked the building, kind of looked at all the obstacles that we had, and that is what this proposal is all based on, by what they found. Our hopes are by doing this, we can spark more interest with some companies getting more bids. Like I said, obviously we only had one bid before. So our hope is by doing this that we can spark more interest and basically get a competitive price. That's what we want and what's going to be best for the district. So this is going to cover obviously the high school for years by doing this. So it's not just a 5 or a 10-year plan. This is probably a 20 to 25-year plan, plus eliminating more of the older equipment that we would have to do in the future. So I know that was one of the, when we started with this chiller, with the purchase of the chiller, we had that in mind, that by sizing it the way we did, we could cover all of our bases with this. So obviously we got a great price on that chiller. Those prices have doubled now, if not probably higher than that. So I know Michael and I have looked through this, Pam's looked through this. This proposal covers everything we need to cover. As far as the district is concerned, yeah, it covers us for what we need done. And hopefully we can spark some interest with this.
So this proposal really just has us contract with Tower Pinkster to create the plan.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
For us to go bid against, instead of, I think last time, didn't we have the people that were going to install it kind of decide what they were going to install? And
yeah, Michael and I kind of worked on the proposal together. And we had a company come in and look at some of the stuff and kind of gave us some ideas. And then obviously with the way of the world now and the prices and availability of stuff, so that was probably one of the reasons why the price was spiked up pretty high on that first initial bid that we got. So we thought, from what we heard out from different companies, is that if we had a more defined spec, we might get more interest in bids on the bidding procedure.
as you guys were talking with Tower Pinkster, did it confirm what you guys were thinking, or did they have some other ideas for how we might be able to install these systems?
I think we all kind of collaborated, and Mike, if you want to step in anytime you want, but I think our idea that we had with collaborating a lot of these smaller chillers into one, and then obviously the biggest hurdle was adding cooling to the gym. And we think we might have come up with some other ideas to do that and accomplish that at a cheaper rate.
Think of this as, sorry. I usually don't need a microphone.
You don't for us, it's for YouTube.
Think of this as an option. The cost estimate for this engineering is, we think, appropriate and commensurate with what we would have expected to see a year ago or a year from now. It's also very close to the engineering component of the original bid that we got as a turnkey project. What this allows us to do is take that design and go out and farm it to what we expect to be a larger group of folks. The turnkey may in and of itself been complex enough that it discouraged participation rather than encouraging competition. So think of this as an option. If we get the engineering work done, we put the bid package out, and we think it's going to come in lower. There are a few changes to the design and a few areas where we found the original approach might have driven some higher costs. We've addressed those in the concept, and we think this approach should give us a lower bid. If that lower bid comes in, let's say 20% lower, then the risk of not having a turnkey bid is likely offset and rational in this approach. If this bid comes out that the engineering plus the install is right on top of or higher than the original turnkey, then consider going back to the turnkey approach. It protects us against the backside risk of any issues during the install that might come up. But in this case, we think that's very unlikely. It's not likely we're going to see a higher cost or an offset in the install cost that puts us at risk here. I think this, approaching it this way is, it's an options logic. It's a lower cost way to get in and get started and open up our options over the coming year in pursuit of a more competitive and less costly overall install.
I'm sorry, guys, did the turnkey approach give us a time limit on how long that bid is valid?
I would not expect it to be valid now,
Okay.
especially with the cost of materials and things like that. It would need to be revisited.
So if we did decide we had to go back to that, we need to have them come revisit, rebid.
Yep, we'd ask them to refresh it, and along the way, some of the things we've learned and the things we have, we determined as we pay for the engineering package, we own the contents of that. So the ideas we've discussed, some of the efficiencies and changes in the scope and the way it's been approached, we can certainly introduce those and expect that those would be lower cost. If the material components, if the economic factors are more in our favor next summer, we think there's going to be less districts competing to spend a huge amount of money next year. As that comes down, we hope that that would also help. So it really just gives us an option. We can look at the costs and say, do we think that the turnkey option would be higher, lower, or the same as this year's bid? And then assess against that. And if we want, at that time, go out and do a turnkey bid again.
Yeah. And then similar question, did Tower Pinkster give us a timeline on their bid for the engineering services, how long that's good for?
I think it's 2 weeks, wasn't it, Pam?
Yeah, it's
2
pretty
weeks from
tight.
today.
Pretty much need to commit or forego, yeah.
Okay.
I think we're pretty much right on top of the date now, aren't we? Yeah.
And just for, help me to remember, the chiller, because I think I see it in here, we did go through and buy that chiller that we'd, because of the cost of it was gonna be
Yep.
prohibitive to buy next year, right?
Yeah, we will warehouse the chiller somewhere on site. Yeah. Pickle it for the winter.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the engineering resolution. I'll make a motion to approve the engineering resolution, as presented.
I'll second it.
Now we'll open up further discussion. Any other discussion, Marika?
Yeah, just, I will recuse myself from this vote. I am an employee of Tower Pinkster. I will not do any work associated with this project. As a firm of 180 employees, it's very easy to not have to do any work for the district, but I am an employee of Tower Pinkster. But in terms of discussion, I would like to just note that I think from the previous discussion, I have a strong belief that once you have construction documents, that you are asking a contractor to bid what we call drawings and specifications. That alleviates the district from a lot of risk. I'm not a fan of a turnkey approach when you're talking this kind of dollars, because you're just going off of a verbal discussion of what work you anticipate to happen. If you go forward with an engineering design, you have drawings and specifications that you can hold the contractor to. So I believe from a district standpoint, it's valuable to be able to bid them to something versus a tour and a discussion. So I think that's valuable for the district.
Thank you, Marika. Any other discussion?
Pam, I just want to make sure that the dollar amount is understood. I missed it in that fine print. Maybe just verbalize that.
I saw it as a fixed fee of $88,000, $88,400 plus reimbursable expenses on page 3. And then there's a commissioning service that they'll work on a fixed fee of $16,200 plus reimbursable expenses to work on scope change and some other things.
Right. That was the amount we talked about. And then we were still gonna have our attorneys just give the whole contract a once over to make sure it was, the way we wanted it, so.
So maybe I'd like to amend my motion to give, the math teachers aren't here anymore. So roughly right, $115,000
a little less than that.
but up to, that way in case there's something that the attorney doesn't like. So
That's fine.
what is 89 plus 16? Yeah, it's close.
It was like 105 if you add those
Yeah.
two together.
So I'll just go 110, up to $110,000 for an engineering resolution. Can I get a second for my amendment?
Second.
Any other discussion? So knowing Marika's recusing herself.
I'm going to bring up one more discussion item. Looking at this under the compensation, it notes the fee proposal is made upon the following assumptions, and number 6 is the existing electrical service has the capacity to serve the new equipment. Do we know if that is the case? We're adding significant more cooling, adding a gymnasium to this.
The 480 ton, excuse me, from the discussions with Lapine, they believe that the building service has enough to carry the 480 ton, especially with the decommissioning of the 200 plus the 50s, plus now a third 50. So we believe that the building has that. Now the pipe running right to the chiller, no. So the electrical from the building out to the chiller needs to be redone. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think so. They do have some electrical engineering in there for power distribution from existing main distribution to new equipment, documentation specifications. I think they've got it picked up there. I just want to make sure we don't get an extra for that.
Thank you, Marika, for keeping us out of trouble. You pick up stuff that the rest of us aren't, so thank you. That's why it's great to have a diverse board. You see any needs that need to be repaired in this? No? No? We're good? All right. All joking aside, I know Marika's going to recuse herself, so we still have a quorum, so we're good. So all those in favor of my proposal for up to $110,000 for engineering, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, motion carries. We're still spending money. Let's talk about the stadium lights and the resolution we've got there.
I'll go on that. Okay, so the stadium lights, you may or may not know, we have some issues that appear like they cropped up last fall, where the lights were going out during games. So definitely something that needed to be looked into. And the point we're at with that, Brian is still investigating some issues that may lead to not having to actually replace the lights, but it's sort of looking like we're going to. So what we've wanted to do is get a bid out for doing the fixtures, not the poles, but fixtures and lights, upgrading those. Because if we want to have this done by fall, when football starts again, we've got to kind of get a move on it. So we just need to kind of get the bid out there and get some interest back. I think he's had a quote, and I'm not sure what dollar amount you threw in there. I remember hearing 140, 50. If we're going to do a max, because we don't have the bids back yet. They're due in 2 weeks, so we don't have actual numbers. We just got some ballpark ideas on what something like this could cost.
I may be causing some confusion down
Oh.
here, so there are no proper bids yet. We're still gonna put it out to bid, but
Correct.
we were looking for a not to exceed from the board, knowing the background, and then we'll launch the bids. We're just concerned about that timeline and turning this around or signing on something prior to the next meeting at the end of June.
Yeah,
That was the
that's
concern.
the end of June. So
Sorry
okay.
for the confusion there.
Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, so the timeline basically, if we could get a max not to exceed, then we'll not have to wait till the end of June to get somebody on board doing this project, if need be. So I don't know if you want to add anything on.
Yeah, we're still doing a little homework. I'm bringing in a company. We're going to do some draw tests on each one of those poles. We know the visitor side is the problem, and I've got Rapay company out of Allegan. They have this machine. They can come in, actually test poles, try to isolate if we have another problem there. That's the last thing we need to do is get new lights up and we have the same problem. So just doing a little homework first. They might be here the end of this week. They haven't confirmed with me yet. We did our own little test here the last couple days. We've let them run all day and they haven't gone out. So we're thinking obviously it's a heat issue, you know, in the fall and when football was going. One of the problems, it's kicking the breakers out. They're getting warm. We do know each side, the home side, visitor side, is a 200 amp service. We knew we were pushing like 196 on each side. So we're right there. We're getting close. So obviously with it being warm out, the longer those burn, you know, and then we start running into problems. So we're just trying to isolate, do a little homework right now, make sure we cover all our bases first. Just any unforeseen problems that we may not know about. So.
Would add just one other piece of information. We kind of talked about doing a portable system or having a backup if we left those lights in case they went out. And I didn't know this. We ran into apparently there are guidelines with MHSAA about lighting and the amount of light. I don't know all the specifics, but in talking with the AD, that portable lights often don't meet that. Like on a consistent basis, if that's what we're relying on. So I think we had it happen twice last year.
Yeah.
Luckily, they cooled down, came back on. But just in case you were kind of wondering about a backup plan just for that season, that we might get in, we might create more additional issues.
Yeah, we got frowned upon when the lights went out and we tried to use the portable lights. The refs actually stepped in and said no, we couldn't use those because the height difference from the home side to the visitor side was different and the structures were different. So it kind of opened up another can of worms for us. So yeah, we found that information out last fall.
I guess I'll ask one thing in regards to, I know we just did strategic planning and I'm not sure if like facilities and bond type stuff came up during strategic planning, did it? Because I'm concerned about a lot of the Band-Aids we're doing and if the longevity of what we're trying to do, right? So I know we just did the thing on the engineering for the high school, but the high school is getting long in the tooth. Does the middle school, you know, I don't know what that is, right? And then with the stadium, I know this year, you know, with spring sports, with how wet it's been, I know it's been really hard to hold events at that stadium because of the drainage and things. And I'm not the guy who's going to stand here and beat his chest about an artificial turf field. That's not me. I mean, I think that that might be a solution, but there are probably other solutions as well. But I know that that's becoming a point of not pride in the community, right? But not being able to hold stuff. But I also know, being on the board from when we tried to pass bonds, anytime we include those types of things in there, it doesn't pass. So I just want to make sure that we are thinking forward about that stadium and about those facilities.
And the other question I'd have with that, Ted, is do we still know, is there a donor still out there willing to write a pretty large check as long as he can put his name on the stadium? Or has that now disappeared?
I'd heard the same thing. I haven't not yet confirmed where that's at. But it did come up in strategic planning. You'll see that in the draft. And I think Brian can speak to the light structures minus poles, because that really elevated the cost if we changed the poles, so that we can put a structure on, correct? And those could be reused with smaller poles in the future. So there is a reusability on the light structure. Kind of getting to your point, Ted, about, okay, are we doing something and going to change it in 5 years or 4 if the community, right? That kind of
and
thing.
that was one of the questions I threw out to a couple of the vendors that I had in and looked at these lights. It's like, if we're going to do this, can we reuse them? That was a big question I had. I said, I don't want to spend, or the district doesn't want to spend $140,000, $150,000 on lights, and maybe in 5 years we have a new stadium. So they are reusable. The controllers, electronics can be moved. Not a big problem. One of the other things that I didn't really realize is the soccer poles are actually taller than the football field. So that kind of brought up another, with engineering and the poles, you get into a whole nother realm. And, you know, they actually quoted me poles. Well, that bumped it another 160, 170,000 to put new poles in. Because you'd have to update all the bases. The poles are taller. I believe the ones at the football field, I think they're a 4-lug pole, where like the soccer are 6-lug because they're taller. And obviously the footing's different. Obviously a lot of structural differences there, but that was one of the things that I was concerned with. If we do this, can we reuse them somewhere else? And they did say yes, that is a possibility. The other thing, excuse me, that I looked at was warranty. The company that I had come in, the lights are warranted for 25 years. You know, so that was a big point to me too, also, that if we have problems down the road 10, 12 years, that we're still covered. And that was a big part of their package too.
And I'm assuming we're moving to more energy efficient lights, right?
Yes,
like
LEDs,
and things.
yes.
And you probably have already looked into this because you guys are grant writers and all that, right? But I know, at least at my place of employment, there was consumers and a bunch of those places were given grants left and right for lights. Right?
Correct.
And I don't know if that's an option for us or not.
Yeah, we're actually right now, I just submitted some paperwork on our boilers. So consumers offers big rebates on boilers if you keep them tuned up, check the combustion ratios on them. So we actually just sent all that paperwork in last week, and we're going to get about a $4,000 check back from consumers on that. So yes, there are big rebates on the LED light end too for the district that we can look into. There's a lot of grant monies out there also.
Do you know how old the current lights are on the football field?
My understanding, these are original to the stadium.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
That's why I asked. I mean, putting Band-Aids on, we've done that with other things
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
past, and sometimes you pay more for that in the long run.
Yeah,
these
so
are well.
yeah, so these the lights at the football field, basically each light has its own ballast. And over at the soccer field, the ballast are actually in the poles for the lights that are on that pole. So a little different. I know when I had the guy here to look at them, he said, "You guys have dinosaurs here." He goes, "I'm sure these are original to the stadium." So he said, "I've seen a lot in this area." He's done a lot of work in this area, and yeah, he goes, I'm sure those are original to the stadium.
Put there by Edison himself. All right, so it sounds like we're asking for a not to exceed number. Do we know what that not to exceed number is?
I believe it was 140,000.
I think it was.
But Brian, double check for me.
$141,133.
So maybe a not to exceed of 150.
Okay.
And again, just board be reminded, there's still there's an outside chance that we might be able to circumvent this with the electrical kind of thing, but I think that sounds like it's slim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little cost and doing a little homework, but it shouldn't be substantial.
Clip some fans to the breaker box.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, even if that happens, well, because they're very expensive to use, right? With the ballast, individual ballast.
Oh, yeah.
There was an electrician who
Well, and the
I was
other
with that night. And
we
one of
can't
those
get
nights.
parts for them. That's our other problem.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
And so, even if it is something else, we still need to look at the picture, the whole picture, I think.
Yeah.
As long as they can be moved to a new stadium, if
Mhm.
if we are blessed with that, then I think that we'll be okay.
Pam, if we were to pay for this out of our present funds, where would those come from?
It's gonna be general fund money, and no bond money applies to athletic facilities at this point, so we couldn't quite make an ESSER connection.
Mr. Bear couldn't make his outdoor classroom at the high school. All right, so we've got I'll make a motion for not to exceed $150,000 to revamp stadium lighting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for all your work on
Thank you.
both those issues. Next on the agenda is a resolution to adopt new math resources for 6th through 12th grade. So Mr. Dykema, you get to.
Is. So the middle school and the high school has a proposal for you to adopt some new resources. They are desperately needed, particularly at the high school. The high school ones, we have gotten our money's worth out of it. They're 14, 15 years old. It's at the point that the companies are no longer in existence. So to find replacement books is next to impossible. 14 years ago, there was no such thing as technology resources with it. So as the high school teachers are looking at the online resources that come with it, they're like, oh my goodness, this is what other people have in other spots. And they're just giddy for the thoughts of how is that going to impact our student learning? And what is that going to mean for our students? That much more engagement, the amount of formative assessments, the amount of instant feedback that teachers get so they can say, hey, I just presented this, but only a third of you are understanding it. Let's try it again in a different way, as opposed to now where it's waiting a couple days later to get all that instantaneous feedback. The middle school, one of the complaints that we hear sometimes from parents is the current middle school series is fantastic, but it's not incredibly parent friendly. There's not the here's exactly what your child learned in school today. With the new resources, it is much more parent friendly. So we're excited for that opportunity as well. Included in that, you see there's a little bit of money for some summer professional development that will line up to get the textbook training. Both the middle school and the high school said, we don't want to wait till August to get working on our new stuff. We want to start it in June already, hear about it, and then spend some time diving in so that when it gets to be August and there's all those other things that happen at the beginning of the school year, we are ready to hit the ground running with that. So this would be a 6-year proposal that it would cover the online resources for the next 6 years. There's print resources as well with it, but we know that not everybody wants an online, fully online thing, that there are still a place and a time for some print resources. So it'll have the physical copies of the books, and then the digital copies will have access with it as well. One of the things we looked at was the cost, and when you look at a strictly digital, shockingly, it is not that much less inexpensive than getting the print plus the digital. The textbook companies know that this is the way that they're going to get their money. When we look at all of the competitions, not surprisingly, they're all within about 5% of each other. So it's not like we're buying the Cadillac version of something out there. They're all very similarly priced. We spent, when coming back to those PLCs that we talked about at the beginning, we spent a lot of PLC time with the middle school and the high school looking at the resources and looking and evaluating. For both of them, there were 6 different options that are out there, and looking at which ones are going to service our students the best and which ones are going to help our students grow and really continue to thrive mathematically. So you see the proposal there, and I'll entertain any questions that you have.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in as well. You should have the executive summary in front of you, kind of outlining some of the history of resource renewal, resource adoption, as Kevin just mentioned. 14 years at the high school, I believe 8 years you mentioned at the middle school, and I kind of heard the phrase with some of the facility discussion around Band-Aid approach. And in just some of the learning that I've done over the past 2 years when it came to resource renewal, that was kind of a similar practice. Kind of wherever the need popped up, right, we might address it in the moment. So one of the things that we really worked on last year with our administrative team, with Jenny Ross-Klingel, with Mr. Dykema as our new math consultant, is developing a curricular review cycle. And so if you remember the later elementary, as we were heading into the 2020-2021 school year, had adopted Envision as a math program, right, as their resource, their core resource. This past year, the early elementary adopted Bridges. And so I didn't want those math resources to get so far removed from everyone. So that's why we really made math a focus area this year, 6-12, so that we could get them at least somewhat close together. We have since then developed a curricular review cycle for every subject area throughout the district. So every year we're going to be, engaging with vertical teams, as Mr. Dykman just mentioned, those conversations 612, so that we can look closely at resources to determine if we even need to renew anything. Some years we might determine that we need to, some we might, determine that we don't. And so within this entire proposal, you can see specifically in the platform is that you see 6th through 8th grade resources for general ed classroom, for all classrooms, as well as intervention resources as well. We also have resources at the high school for Michigan Merit Curriculum courses, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, as well as many electives. Math electives, are still available at the high school as well. Mr. Dyke also mentioned the professional development component. Some of the cost is professional development specifically from the publisher. Some of it is time for teachers to be able to collaborate again, to take what they've worked on as far as essential standards, to take their resources and start matching those two up. So you can really see the timeline of what this would look like. While we would be purchasing resources, sometimes implementation takes time, and so we would give a little bit more time to really have an expectation of full implementation of a new resource into a classroom.
One other point of clarification on the money. This is a sizable investment, and that would be coming out of ESSER funding, the entire amount. It does qualify. We would not present anything to the board that does not. I didn't mean to imply that, but that's I think a fabulous use of the ESSER funds. So just tuck that away. I know it's in there. It's in the summary, but.
And just one other note is all of the resources are on a 6-year renewal. So all of the online resources, obviously the textbooks we receive, we'll get those, we'll have those forever. The online components is on a 6-year license. And then I believe, correct me, is that there are reproducibles at the middle school. So every year we'll get a new set of reproducibles for all of our students, 6th through 8th grade, as well as the online licenses. For a 6-year cycle. So really when you break down the total costs, there is obviously makes the per year cost a little bit less.
I noticed there's the intervention resources listed separately for the 6th through 8th grade, but I don't see it in the high school. Is that included somewhere, like under the electives, or?
Part of that's just part of the conversation at every building and what the needs are. And so I think, Mr. Dykman, you can probably talk a little bit more about the conversations that happen specifically at the middle school and then what's available at the high school.
Yeah, so I would say the intervention structures are different at the middle school and the high school. In the middle school, as Carrie shared earlier, she teaches 3 intervention classes. Currently, she has no resources, so she's creating everything on her own. So as the part of this process, we went out and looked at some research-based intervention programs, and the one that we found here is just fantastic. And Carrie has loved it, and the kids are loving it. It's geared 15, 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week, and the data shows students will get a year's worth of growth in that little bit of time. So we're very excited. The high school has a different structure, so they didn't have that same need for an intervention program.
I've been piloting that intervention with one of my classes, and those 7th graders love it. They come in, can we do that first? Can we do that first? It's just very interactive, and I keep track and I check their growth because I can see where their holes are, because it looks at where their holes are and trains them on their holes. So somebody else in my classroom is a little bit different, so that they're all little at different areas, so it takes their holes and trains them on what they're doing. And then it tells me if their growth is. And every time they grow a little bit, I have like a bag of Starburst. I'm like, oh, you grew 2. You get 2 Starbursts. And man, they are loving it. It's it's just a big, did I grow? Did I grow? So I like seeing that. So it's an awesome program.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the not to exceed amount of $375,000 for the new math curriculum for grades 6 through 12.
Support.
Any other discussion? Hi, well, how you liking this year where you're not in the classroom? Like, what's?
I miss the interaction with the kids, but love working with the teachers, young 5 through 12th grade, and helping them grow mathematically and doing a lot of it. You know, Jay and I talked quite a bit. If we didn't have if we didn't have my position, this whole process of the textbook review would be a nightmare for somebody else to do. Our deans do not have the time to devote the time necessary to do it. And you know, if you'd have asked me in September how long I would have guessed it would take to do a curriculum review, I would have way underestimated how much time. It is an incredibly lengthy time if you're going to do it right. And I feel like we've done the project right. So I'm very grateful to the district for creating the position, and I'm loving my other half of the role working with teachers throughout the U.S. and having a say in what's happening nationwide.
It's an awesome resource for Mattawan to have, and a point of pride for the school district to have you here, so thank you. And I was just getting at the deans, I mean, you are a subject matter expert in math. I mean, if we give that to me to decide, it's probably not going to be the same curriculum you get, so.
Yep, and the teachers were heavily involved with the whole process then. You know, it was not a Kevin Dykema decision. I did all the research, brought it to the 6-8 team, the 9-12 team, and said, help me narrow it down from the 6 to the 3. We brought in salespeople for the top 3 at each of the buildings, did more research after that. So we truly, we're getting our money's worth out of it, and we're very confident that this is a good solution for our district.
Thank you. So all those in favor of the new math curriculum, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Sorry we didn't get you out of here before the sun went down.
That's quite all right.
Moving on to more new business. Early elementary school playground equipment. This is just a discussion on that.
We're just playing around tonight. Oh, no, we're not. It's serious business. But this is actually serious. It does involve play, though. I'm handing out a snapshot that is in the board packet. It's thanks to Google Earth. It's kind of blurry. I have enough down there. Maybe pass one down to Jay, maybe there. So this is the discussion only, update only. We're working, Brian Cornish's department, Pam, myself, working with Jim Owen at the EES, with the parent group. And really, kind of the genesis of this was the parent group came to the high school, or the administration there at EES, wanting to purchase some pieces for the playground. And you can see the sparsely populated playground is the playground for our our youngest learners in that building. Young Fives is now over here. And I put some notes out there to the side, and just really short on structures. Lots of swing sets, but short on structures. So this began a conversation organically at the elementary level. I think once they started seeing, okay, this could turn into a sizable project from dollars and scope, rightly so, Jim gave a call over, to Brian's department and myself, and we had a great meeting with the parent group. And it was at that point we made a decision here at central office to kind of step back, kind of have them work with Brian to get some ideas, which they're still getting. We're still working on that, but wanted to bring this to the board's attention this evening. And again, historically, wasn't here when this building was constructed. We're still looking at some history as to, how I think this imbalance of structures occurred. Not pointing fingers. It could have been a conversation, could have been overlooked, maybe looking to save some dollars coming into the end of that. This section was built, I think, at a second time, or at the end, or I'm not using you know what I mean, in stages. Right. So There could be a variety of reasons, and honestly, it's water under the bridge. We are curious to kind of pinpoint discussions around that. But the reality is we do have contingency funds available. We're hoping to get more information and come back to the board at the June meeting. I wanted to just get this in front of the board officially, talk about it. Brian's here tonight. Jim couldn't make it, and thank the parent group for their initial work on that, and really just entertain any questions that the board may have. We don't have more information. We're hoping to have some pieces back, like I said, in June that might require a vote, but we do feel as a team from the elementary up to central office, we probably do need to populate a few more structures in here and kind of think that through. I will also add there's a preschool section over there. It's not in the map. The structures are too small. So we initially, we're over there, let's just move that. Well, Brian's the expert in this playground thing. Yeah, no, we can't move that stuff over that's not spec'd correctly. So, and again, that probably gets used in the summer. There are people using these structures. So with that, I'll silence my mic, and maybe if the board has any other questions on that, affirming kind of the path we're on, or, if we can clarify things, that'd be wonderful.
I think this is a great thing we should be looking into. I know that when we were building these things, there were wish lists a mile long that we were trying to get everything we could in there, and I'm sure there's somewhere on somebody's desk, hey, let's get back to this conversation once we know that the classrooms themselves are working and that we've got everybody where they need to be. So I think this is obviously you go back to the the ones that are torn down now, but there were 1,000 structures out there, right? And you look, it's kind of eye-opening to look at this satellite image and see that there's not really much to do for those little elementary kids, and especially when I think we outlaw tag and those types of things because it turns into pushing and roughhousing. There's plenty of room for tag, but not enough room for other things. So, I mean, wide open spaces. So I think it's something we should definitely be looking into.
I would agree. I think the kids recognize that currently in the two schools also, and they see that disproportionate amount. So the early L playground is not exciting for these students that recess is a huge part of their day and what they look forward to. So I would recommend we look at structures. I will add a caveat to that coming from the foundation board. There's also been requests for additional gaga pits or other things. We really have to recognize that these students don't get out at recess as much as we used to years ago. So whatever we can do to make sure there's enough structures or activities to engage all students to eliminate the, what'd you do at recess? I walked around. I would be supportive of additional structures and even just a total evaluation of bringing in somebody that specializes in that play to make sure we've got something to get all these young learners engaged and doing something physically active while they're out there.
Thank you for the feedback. One other item we talked about with the parent group was just how much use there is in the summer with community kind of coming through here, walking in. These structures are getting used throughout the summer. And that led to a discussion about some kind of covered area. I mean, I call it gazebo, is that? Pavilion, not a gazebo. My apologies. We'll have people wanting to rent this for weddings and whatnot. A pavilion. Thank you, Brian. So that got brought up, just the lack of shade, and then that led into a community discussion and just a space, again, another outdoor space. So we are kind of looking into the cost on that. Again, we haven't committed to anything. I'm reluctant to even throw out numbers. I wouldn't say it's astronomical. We're getting some general feedback. Nothing, no response to official quotes, but these are reasonable numbers we're seeing. And again, just want to remind the board and community, this would be a contingency investment. And I'm going to put Pam on the spot because I always like to talk about contingency funds, just so the community and the board are aware. Non-general fund here. the contingency for that is, I think, north of 1.3 million.
Correct.
Yeah, so there are funds there, and again, this is a great conversation to talk about investing those those contingency and actually community tax dollars. So stay tuned. We'll pass that information along as we're receiving that, but also I'll mute here, and any other additional questions for.
Any other questions for Randy or Mr. Corner? All right, we'll move on. Next in front of us is the VBISD General Fund Approval Resolution. Yeah, Pam, if you want to go for it.
Yep.
I got some questions, but I'll let you go first.
Okay. So this is required under Michigan School Code that constituent districts look at and approve their ISD or RESA budgets, general fund budgets. So this is something that the ISD will provide us. They provide us every year. And they do a nice write-up, lots of facts. I mean, it's more than just looking at the balance sheet. They do a nice write-up of what all goes into their general fund and, their sources of revenue and all the different sectors they're serving. I thought it looked really nice. So it's just a standard procedure, basically. But if you have questions, obviously I don't get into a lot of the detail with the ISD budget. I know general things that are involved in their budget, but if there were super specific questions, we might have to go back to the ISD for that. But that's basically why this is on the agenda this month.
The risk of poisoning the water a little bit. I guess I'll just ask Randy before I do. Do you feel like you're getting the support from the ISD that you need for our district? Being the largest district in Van Buren County, are you getting the services that we help to pay for? And do you feel like you're getting the support you need from the ISD?
Fair question. I do feel like we're on the right pathway. I think the last 2 years have created some challenges with COVID, changeover in leaderships at both entities. But I do think, and I may have Jay chime in. Jay probably spends a little bit more time on the curricular support side. I do feel like there's open conversation. We're at the table. We're having the conversations. And in a district like this, I'll acknowledge, it's not a secret, being the largest, what would be called the anchor district, we outsize the other districts substantially. That it's not a normal kind of comparison. So we do have to be somewhat of an advocate at times, but also realizing we have vastly more resources than other districts. However, we do need to be at the table, making sure we're getting our share from the ISD. Jay,
and maybe I say that wrong. It might not be the share. I just want to make sure we're getting support, right? Because I know in the past there's been discussion about behavioral health and those types of things that it didn't feel at the time that we were getting proportionately an adequate amount of support from the ISD. I get it. There are kids with those needs in all the districts, but just because of the sheer size of ours, we end up with more, right?
Right. No, I appreciate the clarification, and our share is kind of misleading. I like proportionate. I do feel like we are, and actually I think there has been an increase, and some of that's coming out of the ESSER money and the funding, and again, just being at the table, making sure, we're looking at county needs, but we're also looking at our district needs. Jay, you probably have a few things to add, maybe to kind of season this conversation a little bit, just with your involvement, kind of in the detail.
Yeah, so I think some of the structural changes that we've implemented recently. I mean, we ended up hiring our own director of special education, Amy Watring, and even with that shift, the ISD still continues to support with a special education supervisor multiple days a week. I believe we're 2 days a week right now, which actually, when you look at the total amount of time we get for supervision, it's more than what we had in the past. Next year, I believe that we're transitioning to 3 days a week, and that's from a special education supervisor position. That individual specifically supports itinerant staff, so special education, social workers, teacher consultants, school psychs, OTs, PTs, ASD consultants, so there's a lot of support that is directly being connected to the itinerant staff that are servicing our students in the buildings. We do receive a lot of support from the ISD with itinerant staff. The other thing that really was launched, I believe last year, mid-year, was the hiring of mental health clinicians. Okay, so we actually have 2 mental health clinicians now, one at the middle school, one at the high school. They also help support the elementary buildings as well. And, I know in speaking with our deans and our principals, that has been absolutely invaluable. A lot of that, I know our second mental health clinician really came out of ESSER funds, the original ESSER, no, it was ESSER 3, I believe, where the board had approved the 5% payment to the ISD to support with math consultation, early literacy consultation, as well as, hiring of some mental health clinicians. So, all of those new staff, throughout the ISD have really been, fantastic in collaborating. At our curricular meetings, curriculum director meetings, we talk a lot about how we're utilizing resources with the ISD so that we can support kids across the board.
I ask this only because, I've been on the board a while, and it feels like every year we get this request to approve their budget, and there's not a soul here from the ISD to explain what they want. Or I know we get this, right? And I know we've asked them to come in the past, and I'm not asking them to come for like a dog and pony show, but it always just feels like a rubber stamp thing.
I think they were here one of the last couple years. Might not have been last, yeah. Right,
Oh, he
they will
came
come
last
if you
year.
ask, but they were here one of the last couple years, I think.
And I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm not trying to be obstinate. I just want to make sure that as a board, we're fighting for what you need. If you need more from the district, I make sure you're letting us know, because we approve these budgets, and if we don't, I guess they have to listen, right? So this is one of our tools.
Pam, do you recall the date, the deadline they need
it's
this
right now.
approved? Well, I think if we were meeting it, is it say the end of, does it have a deadline on
Yeah,
it? Well, I was just wondering if the board wanted,
June 1st.
if the board needed more time. Okay, well, we're not gonna convene before then, but.
Yeah. And that's the frustrating part as a board, is you get it, you have basically a month to ask questions, then you don't even get another month, right? It's just, they send it to you, and then.
Well, to your point, I think we can definitely communicate that back to the ISD, and see if we can't, get that timeline moved back a little. And also, we'll have them, the next time we do this, we'll have them out. We'll have them at the board meeting to answer questions and try to get a draft. I actually like that idea, and I think they're willing.
I like the idea, but as a layperson, I don't know what questions to ask. That's why I'm relying on you and Jay and Pam to let us know if you're getting the support you need from the district, from the ISD, so that if they do come, I know what kind of questions to ask them on your behalf, or to press them on. I just want to make sure that they're giving you the support that you feel like you need.
Well, we absolutely appreciate that support, and I also think, when the ISD comes out, it's just good to see folks too, and connect, and but yeah, great feedback. I appreciate the support from the board. I do think we're heading the right way with the ISD, and unless Pam, you have anything else to add there?
I was just going to add, I think that they typically have gotten this done for like our April meeting, and I know they were a little behind this year on it, and I think part of that is all the ESSER funding is you know, that's been a new animal for all of us. But they also don't know, you know, the state doesn't have their budget done yet for school funding, so they're trying to put a budget together without really knowing what they're going to be getting exactly either. So it's just all a little tricky timeline. But they might have been a month later than they were last year.
And I know we contract stuff back to them, but it feels like, and that's why I keep asking about the support thing. It feels like over the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've taken more back in-house because we need it, right? So we brought the ECEC thing here because we want to make sure that we provide for our youngest learners, because there wasn't always the space for them in the ISD programs. And so we took that burden. I know they pay us to have spaces in the buildings and those types of things. I just want to make sure that they're doing what you guys need them to do and are supporting you and the vision that you have for our district.
And just one other specific ask, I guess, if we're going back to them or thinking about having them come to next year's meeting, would be, and I can't remember if he did this the past couple of years, but when I read this, I'm always curious about, like, I don't know if they could give us any sort of report about the impact on Mattawan or an overview of that. Like, Jay actually kind of answered one of my questions already, but under mental health clinicians, they mentioned that staffing has increased from 7 mental health clinicians to 16 during the 21-22 school year, which is fantastic, you know, that the districts need that. And you answered like what it meant on our staffing. So I don't know if that's something to expect from them or a little overview that we need to put together internally, but that's what makes this, for me, kind of hard to interpret, and I think might be a helpful add.
That's good feedback as well,
And we're a sprawling ISD, right? So you go from 7 to, what was it, 7 to 16? Is that what the number was? Part of that's just the amount of districts, right? And the amount of buildings, but that doesn't take into account the amount of need, right? You've got somebody in Covert or Bloomingdale. They need them. I'm not saying they don't need them, but the touch that they get there, if we get one here, they could be very overwhelmed.
I think just to speak to that, just for general public knowledge, because I don't know that they always have the same information that's in front of us, is just for reference, the Van Buren ISD serves, it shows 16,008 students, while Mattawan is 4,060 of those. So just to keep that in reference is they serve 12 districts, but we account for over 25% of their students. So just to help the public understand that what's in front of us and why we're kind of making that, to ensure that we are supported as we need. We are 25% of their total district, although we're only one of 12 districts that they serve, so. We're kind of the big fish in the small pond, unfortunately. You know, it would be different, and we've had this discussion, you know, as even part of the strategic planning is, it's different if you sit in Kalamazoo, because you are sitting with Portage schools and Kalamazoo, where we equal their same district count, but the way that we sit in Van Buren ISD, we really are, we don't have a sister district to us within the ISD at all.
All right, so all that being said, like I said, poisoning the well, like I'll make the motion to approve the resolution. I don't want anybody to think I don't want to approve the ISD. I just want to make sure we're being supported. So I'll make the motion to approve the general fund resolution as presented.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? This one require a roll call. No. All right, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. All right, there's a couple things that got added in here. It was before the meeting, but some proposals for some international travel for educational support or educational travel. So I'll kick it over to.
Yes, Board, you've got two proposals before you, and these came together prior to COVID happening. So I believe they would have been in the planning stages, what is that, March of, or coming into the summer of 2020, thank you. The 1920 school year is kind of when we all kind of went into the shutdown. So essentially the pause button was hit. Now, you know, everything kind of was status quo. We're coming out of that now. So it may feel like these are scheduled for June. And so I think simply what happened was intentions were in the right place. This document, I think because of the shutdown in that March, never came into the board arena because they weren't going to go or it was paused. And we're back at that operating level now of getting these approved, which kind of makes it feel like it's last minute. It's not. The planning's all been done. The staffing is set. The itineraries, they've all been basically on hold for 2 years. So I just wanted to give you a little context on that as we're all kind of readjusting to getting, back to maybe this normal travel zone. So with that, I'll let you look those over. And we'll field any questions that you may have, or as we are seeking approval for these. Good conversation with the high school principal and so forth.
So the first one is for do you want a motion for both, or are they?
I just say,
separate?
they're listed on the agenda as separate. We probably should just do them separately, if you don't mind.
So they don't impact a lot of students. I know that, Randy and I have had conversation in the past about getting, not the timeliness of this, but to make sure that everybody has to, who's supposed to be doing these things. And I think sometimes when they fall in the summer, it doesn't feel like it's school, even though it's school kids, right? And we still need to make sure that our students are being taken care of and are safe and doing the right things there. So with that being said, does anybody have a motion for the travel to Italy for was it 4 students, 6 students, 4?
So just to help, go ahead, Maureen, sorry.
You can go ahead. I did have some discussion before motion, but you can go ahead.
Yeah, I guess mine is discussion also is trying to understand, are these school-sponsored trips, or how does this come across for students?
Great question. So in reviewing board policy, the board has to approve overnight travel. It's considered school sanction if it involves schools, our students, and staff. And so this conversation, Marika, great question. It's come up before, and I think this is part of the conversation with Ted and just the rest of the cabinet to clarify when these requests are coming. So again, checking again today, right? I went back and reviewed this, and it's a pretty simple bar that if it involves our students and staff, it is school sponsored, therefore the board has to approve anything overnight. That's how we're interpreting it. It is a small group, yes. And I think in the past, maybe it's either fallen in the summer to Ted's point, or it's been 1 or 2 kids and a staff member that might be a parent, right? It gets a little muddy maybe, but we've just tried to fall on the safe side of board policy. I suppose this is how we're also looking at it.
And I know Bruce isn't here, but this might be a conversation to bring up, Sherry, in a policy discussion about how involved we want to be or need to be, and what the breadth of that conversation is, right? Because
I similarly just wondered, I hadn't thought about it before. Italy, I don't remember us doing anything like that before, but what the liability that brings when it's, school sponsored, that's kind of the big question.
Right, and Sherry, again, great point, because you get into a travel insurance question. So I believe, some of these trips, it's through the agency, so it's not necessarily school insurance, but I don't believe the board policy gets into that. I mean, I think that line is a very simple, low line. Okay, if we have our students and staff, then we kind of have skin in the game, so to speak, and they're not fussing over the amount of kids. But again, great policy committee conversation. Most districts, I think, do approve out of country travel, though. I have seen that. The overnights, I know we probably need to clarify that, and we can work on that. But, you know, I felt, I'll speak for myself, I felt more comfortable after having this conversation, bringing this to the board tonight, just because we have kids leaving the country.
Well, this proposal in D2, it is addressed where the liability, goes through the organization. But I guess my concern is something we brought up with other trips, like for the band, et cetera, is just keeping an equity lens on these requests. I mean, this is an amazing experience for these 4 kids, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have it, but it's right in the proposal that it's open to students of any grade level that were able to pay the travel expenses. And I'm happy for them, but I mean, we have to be cognizant of any other students that can't, and just have those discussions, and it's probably best done at the policy committee level, but I think it's also worth mentioning here.
So for the public, I mean, this first one is trip to Italy. I could go through it again, figure out how long it is, but it's a $5,000 trip for each kid. Sorry, Anna, you're not going. But I think, but that's part of the point, is trying to figure out that through that. I think what Maureen's trying to bring up is through the equity lens about who can go and who this is for.
Well, and just adding kind of to the conversation, thinking about curriculum and these trips impacting our curriculum and overall experiences, this is a great conversation, again, to fold into a broader curriculum discussion. What are the goals behind trips is also, you kind of coined this equity lens. I love that phrase, that it's exactly what we need. I think all of this, as we're getting into curriculum review, curriculum cycles, materials, additional experiences that kind of, flavor the academic or even athletic for that, or arts experiences for students. I think we're at a critical time to kind of fold all of that together and have larger conversations about all of this as we're reviewing the process.
Yeah, and I don't want to eliminate these opportunities, but like when you look at the sports teams, they do the online fundraisers. Both my son's teams have raised a lot of money, so just looking at the organization of it. So it's, if you want to go on the trip, you may have an option, or using other funding, grant funding or MPEF, whatever other things we can think of to make these more equitable. I would love to see that.
So do we have would anybody like to propose a motion for the educational and national travel to Italy?
Yeah, even though I brought up those concerns, just to show that I support opportunities like this, for these students, I'll move to, we're doing them one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yes.
I'll move to accept this proposal for educational international travel, the first one.
And I'll second that. I just haven't been, I felt like for a while there I was doing all the motions, so I thought I'd not make it look like I was trying to wag the dog. So I second that. Any other discussion?
This is just one point of discussion. This is the first I've ever seen one of these trips opened up to all ages. Usually it's been certain years that qualify: juniors, seniors, sophomores, juniors, etc. Which is, again, I'm not saying that to shoot this trip down, but I'm saying that for additional policy discussion. It's a different game when you're taking a 6th grader versus a senior in high school, and you better make sure you got the precautions in place for that.
It's a good point, because I don't know if that is really what she meant. I was just assuming it was, I know it says any grade level, but I don't know if it was, I just made the assumption that it was any grade level in high school, but.
Just having been on one of these trips before with students, there is a cap as far as the age limit. So you cannot be under the age of 14 in order to attend an educational international travel event.
Question asked, question answered. All right, so with a motion and a second, any other discussion?
I just have a couple, one is a question and then a comment. Are these, so we have staff leading both of these, are they paid during the time of these trips? Or how does this work as an employee of the district taking, one is 11 and one is 4 students?
That's a good question. Well, they're paid throughout the summer though, just generally speaking. So they are getting paid. I don't know if I'm understanding your question. Like, are they being compensated? Are they under the school's authority because they're getting paid?
Are they getting any additional compensation for going on this trip because they've been working extra days that aren't in the contract?
Is that what you meant? Is there a stipend or extra pay?
Correct. I was picturing like a stipend, or like I'm teaching summer school, so that's on addition to my 180 days under contract. These individuals would have, I forget how many days they were, but I think it was around 10 days of additional compensation.
No, good question. I'll rely on maybe some others in the room on history. Pam, any thoughts on this?
I don't know that much about the history of something like that, but I'm not aware of any stipend for those trips for them.
If it's a stipend, then that would be something I would think we'd have to vote on. I mean, that's extra beyond their pay. I didn't think that it ever was. If anything, I know some trips are, the person going is paid by the tour agency. I don't know if that's the case here, but that's very common practice, to take kids on educational trips and or they go for free, the facilitator.
Because this isn't a curricular requirement, the teachers are obviously volunteering their time in order to go on these trips. Again, I haven't worked with World Strides, but I do know that chaperones of trips have their trip paid for. So that's part of the experience, is that, yes, they are, offering up their time, but, they do receive the opportunity to go on, pretty amazing experience as well, chaperoning those students.
Right, and just thinking about our Schedule Bs on the contract, like for certified staff, I don't believe there's any stipends already built in for chaperoning, which if there were, that would be automatically covered when the board approves that. But, the pay, staff are paid throughout the summer, so I don't want to say they're not being paid, but that's just their general salary payment, no additional components. But appreciate the world traveler down here clearly is been through this before. Does that help?
That is helpful, thank you. And I think I think personally for discussion items, I have to echo Maureen's, and I brought this up the same with the band trip, is that I do struggle that this is a school trip only if you can come up with $5,000. So for that reason, that is hard for me to support when we're talking about all students, that I think I'd like to understand more about the trips of what it entails, other than a student who'd like to travel abroad and has the family ability to bring in $5,000 for the trip themselves. So with that, I guess I just want to clarify, I understand the ship is going, one's leaving on June 17th and one is June 20th, and I don't want to stop those, but I think for future,
I think definitely
this is
there's a
not
policy
something that I
conversation
can
there.
support in the future.
Yeah, it seems at a bare minimum there should be a minimum number of students that can go before it can happen, right? Particularly just to make sure that it all looks like it's on the up and up. I got 3 kids that go now. As a teacher, or a staff member, I get to go on a free trip to Japan because I was able to talk 3 other kids to spend money. I don't know that that's the best image for the district. It doesn't give the best image of that. It's not what we want for equity for kids, right? So if it's important enough, we should be able to there should be a way to fundraise or to do other things for it. So,
Yeah, and towards those points, Ted, it sounds like this second trip to Spain has been, I guess, thought out a little better along those lines. The kids have to at least have passed second level Spanish. They could get private donations to help cover their funds. So it sounds like they did, or she has had developed in the past a fundraising program that they can go through.
I'd like to make a motion to allow this trip to Spain.
I'll second that.
I think we already had the we already had
Oh,
a
did
motion
we?
in a second. I think Maureen was the motion. I forget who was the second, but
I think you were the second, Ted.
I was the second. Yeah, I was the second. Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
But at this point, we'll call for a vote, right? So, I know there's been some concerns. There'll probably be some concerns on the next one that we vote on here in the next 2 minutes. But all those in favor for approving this trip to Italy, say aye.
Oh, we already voted on Italy.
Aye.
Okay, Italy's good, yeah,
Aye.
it's do Italy. Yes.
All opposed? Not hearing any. Motion passes. So now we're on to the Spain one. I know, Mark, you did talk about there's some, ability to raise funds. It feels an awful lot like, I know there's the ones the Costa Rica thing that the kids were doing in middle school that my kids were supposed to go on but didn't because of COVID. And that patron can donate thing is really just asking grandparents and anybody you want to send an email to. It's still not I don't know if it's a way to get, it's still very much family support, right? And it just goes back to that equity thing. We beat that thing to death. My concern on this one, though, is the chaperones. So we've got one of our staff members, and then it appears to be a friend of hers who's a teacher in Florida as the other chaperone. Do we know anything about this other teacher in Florida as we're approving it as our board?
So as a district-sponsored or district-approved travel event or any activity, if they were in supervision of our students, we would complete a background check of that individual.
Does that mean we'll be doing that in this case?
We haven't yet, but we will.
Yeah, and that would apply to the other chaperone for the Italy trip too,
Oh, so
right?
I thought it was John.
With the tour company, but, I mean, is it done in that case, or, because they're with them? That's a good point, Ted. Yeah.
Right, and that's regardless of whether the travel agency does any background checking. I mean, we'll take care of that through our basically employment, like we would a new employee. It's pretty thorough. It's beyond an eye chat.
I just think that probably gets a little harder if it's a Italian resident, right? Don't let we have Interpol access. So I think there's one chaperone. It's just the group will be with an Italian tour director 24 hours a day. That one feels like you're paying. You're part of it's probably part of the insurance or part of the liability for that company. But this one is definitely not. This one has a person's name and their affiliation with the staff member. And I just want to make sure that our kids, I don't think anything's bad. It's just a yellow flag.
So just to clarify, I did notice that the Spain trip was partnering with EF Tours. I've been on an EF Tours trip before over to Germany with our German club many years ago. And so kind of how it operates, just to give you a context, is we probably took, I want to say about 28 individuals. It was students, it was parents of students, it might have been a grandparent, might have been cousin, whoever was obviously interested in attending the trip. You're on a bus. You also might have another school or program that's with you so that they can fill out the bus. And then you have a tour guide assigned to that entire group for the entirety of the trip. Same thing with the bus driver. So you get to know those two people very, very well. So when they say, that they're with EF Tours, there's the tour guide that's assigned to the organization, and then you have, the chaperones that are assigned. So with the group I went with, we had, 28 individuals. I want to say total, we had about 24 students, and then the rest were adults. So for every 10 kids, we had to have a chaperone coming from the district to support. So that just gives you a little bit of context about what that trip kind of looks like, especially through EF Tours. So very reputable, tour company, and they actually put on a great experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. That one, I think, for Italy made sense. It's just this one that's listed out in the Spain one that just makes me, there's 11 students, so I don't know the policy offhand, but if it's a 1 to 10 thing we needed one more. Hey, this is somebody that teaches in Florida and somebody I went to school with. I'm not saying he's not a reputable person. That's just gives me pause. That's all. I just like us to look, even if we pass it, I'd like us to look into it a little deeper.
Yeah, she does make the comment in here, although it's not clarified, that also parents of students will be going, but she doesn't say how many that might be.
Where does it say that?
Second line of page 2. Which students will be going? Mattawan students have passed Spanish 2 or higher, and it just says parents of students.
Okay. But then it also says, but then when you get down to number 7, it says how many chaperones in addition to staff members will be going. It just says one other chaperone. I'd like to believe that if a parent was going, we'd be listing parents as chaperones, but maybe not.
We can do follow-up, and we would have to do a background check of any of the adults that was going to be going and supervising as well. So we will do a follow-up with our staff member and get the information to complete the iChat.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposal for kids going to Spain.
And I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, that completes our new business. So now we're on to public comment. Do we have any additional public comment? All right, so we'll move into the superintendent's report.
Well, thank you, Board, for all the work tonight. I would like to thank Hometown Heroes group, fabulous. My son did actually work in his project, and just great to see the students up here speaking. Very just composed and intelligent, and I thought for a minute there they were much older than the grade they're in, but they did a fabulous job, and thank you, teachers, for keeping those kinds of projects in front of our students. It is great to reflect on the wonderful people in our lives and our families, our community that really give back consistently. Makes a huge difference. Also, PLC group. We've said a lot about this already. Very energizing. Just want to thank those teams and thank the work that Mr. Larner's office is doing in conjunction in conjunction with Jenny Ross Klingel's office and the principals and just our leaders at the buildings. It's just really a testament to the caliber of employee that we have, educators, support staff, and administration in this district to move the ball as far down the field as they have in the short amount of time. And something tells me that we're just really just getting we're just getting started actually with this work. So it's very exciting, and thank you to them. I want to give an update on the EES principal search. We are on schedule here. The job has been posted. I believe that closes May 13. Is that Friday the 13th, Mr. Larner? Don't ever pick that date again, please. No, I'm kidding. Actually, Friday the 13th. I'm not kidding. And then we'll begin. We've assembled an interview search committee. And so I believe first rounds are scheduled to happen somewhere between the 16th and 20th. So we normally look through the credential packets and get a schedule together and look at first round candidates. And so I just wanted merely to let the board know we're on track for that position. Just wanted to follow up briefly with the board, and again, may tag team with Mr. Larner. He's had a lot of mic time tonight, but again, this is a curricular piece. Just wanted to give the board an update. Last month, we talked a little bit about, we had some public comment on a particular book being used at the freshman level, and just wanted to follow through. We talked about some protocols to put in place in communication, and we're working to secure the young adult version for the general language arts classes, and just make sure these communications are getting put out clearly via email, and just we've tightened all that up. We did receive the young adult copies, and so I think we've hit the mark on a number of these pieces. The big question was just the review, and I want to come back and just clarify the way this is shaping up for summer work. This review process, again, it's folding into a larger curricular discussion, and just want to ask Jay briefly, just talk a little bit about how that's kind of fold into summer work, so the board just has an understanding. You know, if somebody asks you about it, or you've got a couple talking points about some of the specifics here, you can hear it tonight, and I'll follow up with an email with some more detail. But Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, so Jenny Ross Klingel's really been connecting with a lot of our high school ELA teachers, having some conversations, just getting a list of all of what I'll call our anchor texts that we're using at grade levels, as well as supplementary texts that might be used to support some of the key or critical concepts that are being taught using a specific text. So we're creating a document that really outlines what are the specific required texts that all students will be required to read within each grade level, or a specific, I'll say like an honors level course, as well as what we're calling kind of required choice texts. So we might have a book where that we're using as an anchor, but then we have a selection of maybe 5 texts that students get to choose from that will help support some of the conversation that's going on. Choice text in that capacity, very different than going to the media center and just picking a book out off the shelf, right? It's being guided, it's being very directed that these are the options that you have to choose from. And so in that case, when we're exposing students to these are the select options, we need to be very clear and intentional about, what are our learning expectations using that specific text. And so we just want to, really, in the interest of transparency, get all that out there right away. It'll be something that we'll publish on our webpage. And then, really the big question that a lot of folks have is, so how do we move forward when we find a new text, right, or any of our curricular resources that we're looking to adopt to support our written curriculum. So I always talk about that, is there's our written curriculum, and then there are the resources we use to support our written curriculum. And so, we're having more conversation, kind of finalizing just some of the step-by-step process pieces. There is board policy on it, but under the administrative guidelines, really just kind of refining some of those pieces to kind of align with some of the district structures that we have in place. Things like our vertical teams, our professional learning community teams, our district school improvement team. And so just, bringing some final touches to that specific process so that when we do have a recommendation that comes from a grade level, from a department that we want to bring this particular resource into our classrooms, there's a step-by-step process that we follow so that we know it's thoroughly been vetted. So that's a kind of an overarching view of some of the work that's going to be wrapping up this summer.
I'll summarize that also on a Friday update for the board, just to have some talking points. So a lot of exciting work coming. Yep, go ahead.
I appreciate that work. I know it can be hard work. I just ask us to make sure that we respect the parents, but we also respect the teachers and their ability to want to expose students to something new and different without making it so hard for them to do that they don't do it, right? So they experience something and they want, as a staff, we saw families of teachers today talk about working together, and if they are all in agreement that it's something, then they can easily pitch that to the administration and be able to move forward with it, with an option for parents if they don't want their child to participate. And I'm sure there's a way to do that with those choice texts and some other things. But I want to make sure that we don't micromanage the teaching staff to the point where they're with our children every day. They see the stresses and the things that they're going through and the things that might prepare them for the world. And I'd rather have them have those difficult conversations around difficult topics in an environment where they feel safe, rather than waiting until they get into the workforce and say something that's completely out of touch because of the environment, the sheltered environment, or the environment that they grew up here in Mattawan. So.
Right. We'll have, no, thank you for the feedback. We'll keep the board kind of updated on the process, and I think always when we can clarify a process, it's always a good thing. But appreciate the feedback from the board on that, and we'll look forward to reports in the future on that. A couple other items. I do want to throw a couple days out to the board, and again, these will be in print. I know the hour's getting late, but believe it or not, I think the next time we're all going to be together as a board, well, it could be at a senior function. Okay, awards night maybe, but graduation is coming. And graduation is at Miller Auditorium at 7 p.m. on May 25th. It is coming fast. We have awards night on the 11th, senior last day on the 18th, our senior walk, send-off, clap-out on the 24th, and there's all kinds of activities that day for seniors. But it is May. It's exciting. And hopefully you're looking forward to graduation back at Miller Auditorium. And just a housekeeping note, see Valerie or myself, or on a gown if there's a graduation gown need. I think we're set, but we do have a couple of new members since the last graduation. Yep, so Marika, so we'll. Okay, great. And so Greg actually is our go-to guy, but we channel communications that way. But we want to make sure you have the appropriate attire for graduation.
I'll also say, this will be my first time as board president doing the graduation, and it's exciting for me. I'm nervous. That I was joking with a senior's parent that they'll get the picture of me and their household forever at graduation. That kind of hit home. But I will say that if there's any student that you want to present their diploma, just when we get to that phase, I don't want to throw that on you that evening, right? So I want you thinking about tonight. If there's it gets to their name's called, just tap me on the shoulder. I'll get out of the way, and you can hand that diploma, and your face can be on their mantle for all of time.
Forever. Excellent. Okay. Just checking here. One last thing in closing here for my comments. On May 13 at 5 p.m. At the high school gymnasium, everybody is invited out to join the first No Limits unified sports game, basketball, I'm assuming. Mattawan students with and without disabilities becoming unified through sports. And we just want to invite everybody out again. I'll have another update for that. I believe this is an initiative out of our Kim Porco's office, Director of Whole Child Services. Great concept. And I'll get some photos of the last kind of practice or get together to the board. But that's the 13th at 5 p.m. and just another example of that department working hard to provide these opportunities to all students. Just a wonderful idea. With that, I'll turn off my mic and field any questions, but also want to thank the board. Heavy lifting tonight. Great meeting. Just appreciate all the leadership and support.
So one quick question, I apologize if I missed it, but I've been asked a couple times. Where do we stand on the waiving of the snow? Oh, sorry.
No, I meant to say something about that. I'm agreeing with you. We have not been notified by the state yet. Did you check your email today, Mr. Lerner, or have we?
I have not seen anything yet.
Okay. So we have not been notified by the state. We're checking every day. We're hoping. I think we've got to be getting close. This is typically that first week of May, because I think they're going to grant forgiveness, but they also know if they don't, districts have to scramble to change calendars, and some of them 2.5, they're done before Memorial Day. So that actually, I think, is a good sign that we haven't heard. I think we're gonna, again, I think we're very confident we'll get those 2 days forgiven. I keep saying that, but we have not been officially notified yet. Nothing's come in writing, but we will. I will text you immediately, and we'll send out a school messenger. But thanks for bringing that up, because I meant to say something.
Any other questions for Randy? All right, hearing none. Thanks everybody for a great meeting. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right, support. Anybody?
Support.
Thank you, Marika. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion to adjourn approved.
Thank you, board.